Good evening. Welcome to the October 25th, 2022 meeting of the Farmington Public Schools Board of Education. This meeting is now called to order. Mr. Walker is not here this evening. He's at classes working on his doctorate. Ms. Weems, would you be willing to take roll call in his?
I would be happy to, Madam President.
Thank you.
Mrs. Smith. Here. Mrs. Heinrich.
Here.
Mrs. Fox.
Here.
Mr. Rich.
I am here.
I myself am here, and Dr. Blau.
I am here.
All right, and Mr. Walker is excused. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We will now move to the Pledge of Allegiance. Amy Pan, would you be willing to lead us in the pledge? She is a senior at Farmington High School.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
Motion to approve the agenda by Ms. Weems, supported by Mr. Rich. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. We will now move to announcements. We have established some board agreements this year. They are as follows: listen actively, no sidebars, respect people and ideas, presume positive intent, use electronic devices respectfully and stay engaged, listen to learn, not to defend, be brave and be vulnerable. These are our board agreements. We thank you in advance for respectfully honoring these guidelines during tonight's meeting. By the way, if you would like to speak during public comment this evening, public comment request cards are available on the back table over here. Please fill out a card and place it in the ceramic bowl next to Mrs. Starron. Thank you. For President's update, I'd like to share that our board participated in today's civility conference at Oakland University. This was the last of 3 sessions on civil discourse in which we have participated since August. It was a very productive and exciting opportunity to engage in dialogue with individuals who are experts in this field, including Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson, David Dulio. One of the surprises for me was that there were in attendance members of parliaments of several countries, such as the country of Georgia, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and we had opportunities to dialogue with them about civil discourse. And they were able to learn from us some of the things that we've been using in Farmington to move towards civil discourse and borrow from us some of the strategies that have been working here. So that is all from me. Items from the Secretary. Ms. Weems, would you be willing to share?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The board has received communications regarding the non-competing continuation grant application, Head Start, board members, candidates' positions on topics of social interest, STEAM Academy school speed limits, and a minutes error. Communications are acknowledged, and when appropriate, a response is provided. A list of correspondence can be found in the board packet, which is also available on the FPS website.
Thank you so much, Ms. Weems. Next, we have recognitions. Dr. Delgado.
Thank you, President Blau. It is my pleasure to invite up to the podium our wonderful principal from Hillside Elementary, Mr. Rob Kaufman. We can clap for him as he comes. So while Mr. Kaufman stands there, I will speak kindly about him. So, Mr. Kaufman, you may recall, was identified as the Elementary Principal of the Year through our Michigan organization, MEMSPA, the Michigan Elementary and Middle School Principals Association, but he also was recently recognized by the National Association of Elementary School Principals, NAESP. So a little bit about NAESP. Established in 1921, the National Association of Elementary School Principals leads in the advocacy and support for elementary and middle level principals in the United States and internationally. NAESP supports principals as a primary catalyst for creating lasting foundations for learning through policy and professional learning, advocacy, programs, and resources for effective instructional leadership. Mr. Kaufman was recognized because his efforts make Hillside Elementary a welcoming and happy all of its students. Over the next few years, Mr. Kaufman will help guide Hillside in becoming a Leader in Me Lighthouse School, and Lighthouse recognition is awarded to a school based on the results a school attains in student achievement and its impact on staff, students, parents, and the school community. Criteria for the selection of the principals for this award require that honorees are active principals of schools where programs are designed to meet the academic and social needs of all students and where these are firmly established community ties with parents and local business organizations. And if you know anything about the Hillside community and their love and appreciation for Mr. Kaufman and his reciprocal love and appreciation for them, it's a very special place. So we want to congratulate you publicly. I congratulated you last time, but we wanted you to come back in person because you were in Washington, D.C., meeting with our Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardonas, as well as principals from around the country. So congratulations, Mr. Kaufman. The entire Farmington Public Schools community is so proud to have you, and we thank you for all the amazing work you do. Mr. Kaufman.
It is very awkward for me. I don't know why. I really feel like I do what so many of my wonderful colleagues, and many of them are here again tonight, do on behalf of students for Farmington Public Schools. It's been a great ride. I can't believe I've been here for 20 years, but I want to, first of all, thank you all for that opportunity in 20 years to serve Farmington kids. It's been amazing. I want to share when we went to Washington, D.C., we really are fortunate because SETSEG and MEMSPA provided for my wife and I to attend, so my wife got to go, and she is such a support. Anyone married to a principal is truly a saint because there's just so many things that you're doing, so many evening activities, and to have her be able to take part. But yes, that was a highlight. The Secretary of Education, we were at the State Department and just received so amazingly, and an incredible black tie reception. It was quite an honor, and I can tell you, meeting principals from all over the country and hearing some of their stories, we are very fortunate to be in this community. We have a great community with a great school board, a great superintendent that really support the good things we're doing in classrooms every day, and I'm very, very grateful for that. So the highlight of the trip, and probably the most emotional, and I'll probably get emotional again, but during the ceremony, they asked us and they gave us a bell, and it's pretty large, but and it's engraved and it's really nice, but they asked us to ring the bell in honor of the children we serve. And I guess tonight I'd like to do is ring the bell for you, particularly Board of Education and Superintendent Delgado, for what you do every day for children, because you're giving up so much of your time and your energy to support the amazing kids of Farmington Public Schools. So for you, I'd love to ring the bell. Thank you. And thank you for just, again, the clap for these guys. So, again, thank you for just allowing me the opportunity to be a part of Farmington Public Schools. I'm very grateful. So, thank you. Oh, thank you.
I just wanted to offer congratulations to you. I understand why you are recognized as a great principal. I'm very proud of the fact that we have so many principals who have been recognized, and teachers and staff. I feel very honored and touched. Again, I can see why. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weems. Ms. Smith?
Mr. Kaufman, thank you for ringing that bell. I've had the honor and privilege to work with you and work for you over at Lanigan Elementary. And that was before Mr. Smith. And so I followed you, not like a creeper or anything. I followed your leadership throughout the years because I've too been in the community 26. So it's a privilege to follow you and watch your career as it grows. So thank you for all your service.
Thank you, Ms. Okay. Congratulations again, Mr. Kaufman. Next, we have a report from the Student Roundtable President.
Hi, everyone. I am the president of Student Roundtable. So last Tuesday, we were able to meet for the first time as a group and get together as a group for Roundtable. And the main priority that we had to do was discuss our group focus project. So each year we have a focus project, which is what we like to discuss and make our entire focus for the year about. So we had a lot of different discussion regarding cultural inclusivity and environments, like just protecting our environment. And in the end, we ended up voting today on planning for the future as our new group focus of the year, because we felt that a lot of times we aren't getting really into contact with our counselors, and you kind of get overwhelmed senior year and the end of junior year with college applications. So we thought that getting to know it earlier and communication between students and counselors to help plan for our future better would be a good way to focus our year around. And also last Wednesday, we were able to help attend and become student hosts for the district hosted senior adult breakfast, and that was just a great opportunity for us to get to meet some of the people in our community and learn more about what's happening in our community.
Wonderful. Any questions?
Just really quickly, I attended that senior adult breakfast as well, and it was amazing to see so many students represented. I think Dr. Delgado asked to recognize you. I feel like I saw 20 students stand up.
Yeah.
It was really good, and I appreciate the fact that you guys were hosts and you represented us very well. Thank you.
We were very glad we were able to go. It was just really cool because we hadn't been able to do it the past couple of years. So most of us, it was our first time going. So it was definitely a great experience.
I have a question. Did you also, many of you participate last week in the brainstorming discussions around the mission and vision of the district?
Yeah, we got to read the mission and vision statements, which was interesting because they were written in 2006, which was before a lot of us were born in the group, and then right when some of us were born. So it was definitely interesting to see what the district is about and give our own opinions on how we want to improve and revise it a little bit.
Fantastic. Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Next, we have our legislative update. You've probably heard in the news there's been some legislation that's passed regarding information that school boards and school districts need to post in our buildings and in our boardrooms regarding the rights of parents to be informed about how we make decisions around what we teach and what we provide for our students. That is going into effect as of January 2023, so we will, of course, abide by those new guidelines. Okay. That's all I have for right now. Moving on to district updates. Dr. Delgado.
Thank you again, Dr. Blau. Just a few updates from me. So I did have the opportunity to MC, I guess as it were, my first senior adult forum breakfast. And it was just a wonderful feeling to see so many of our community members able to interact with with our staff and, of course, our students. As we mentioned, we had about 20 of our students from the Student Roundtable, but also we're able to show off our students from the STEAM bots. The robotics team from STEAM Middle School was there with their robot, and they were so excited to tell anybody and everybody who wanted to know anything about their robots and the intimate details of how they made the robots do what they could do. So the STEAM bots were there. We also were entertained by the the Power Middle School Orchestra under the direction of Sandy Vargo, and they did a series of kind of a musical interlude, if you will, a few different versions. And then at the end of the day, we had East Middle School's Encore Choir under the direction of our wonderful Lena Miles. So it was just a wonderful day to show off kind of our students and to celebrate with our community and have some dialogue. I was able to talk a little bit about the state of the school. We shared some millage information, and then we recognized Roxanne Fitzpatrick, wonderful longtime community member, local realtor, for her Senior Extraordinaire Award. So it's just a beautiful celebration, and I understand it's a tradition here in Farmington, and I was just really pleased to see everyone back in person. So thank you for that. I also had the opportunity to attend last Friday, I believe it was, or Thursday, the first annual CARES Grateful Plateful Dinner. And so CARES is such a wonderful community service, long-standing tradition here in Farmington in supporting food insecurity and so many other aspects, including recovery with adults and youth in our community. And so this was the first ever Grateful Plate. It was completely sold out, raised a lot of money that goes directly to supporting families in our community, especially with the holiday season coming up. And so, that sense of kind of pride and community support and generosity would just fill the air there. And so it was really a special evening to be part of and to support. And then I also had the opportunity a week or so ago to attend SAFE. If you're familiar with SAFE, it's suicide awareness for everyone. And so I was there with Ken Massey, Farmington Hills City Council, and some other members there. But really, really impressed with the resource fair and the number of tables, local mental health counselors. We had law enforcement there with gun locks. We had counselors, therapists, local officials. And so it was just a really special night to talk with folks who really care about getting the message out. And as the common theme was, getting information to people before they need it. And so in that aspect, I want to make sure everyone is aware of the number. So it is very user-friendly. If you or a loved one is in crisis, you can call or text 988. It's that simple. Call or text 988 to get suicide and crisis assistance. Many of you may know that on every single student identification card we have in our schools, on the back of that we have a suicide awareness sticker to make sure that any of our young people can get to this number or get to a trusted adult. So it's a community effort to keep us all safe. Certainly mental health is a challenge exacerbated by the pandemic, but these kind of community events are really important, and I was honored to be able to stop by SAFE as well. So with that, I will continue with my updates and invite to the podium our wonderful Assistant Superintendent of Talent Development, Mr. Brad Paddock, for a very special administrative introduction.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Delgado and the Board of Education. On September 29th, we began screening submitted cover letters and resumes of approximately 20 applicants in search of the next principal at Lanigan Elementary. After this initial screening, we began the thorough process of in-person interviews with 8 candidates. The first round interview was with our central office cabinet team. The second round was with a very committed and reflective group of stakeholders from around the community made up of staff, parents, and students. The third round was an intense education-based talent identification diagnostic assessment looking for and identifying key interpersonal leadership strengths within 2 final candidates. The fourth and final round was between 2 finalists speaking with Dr. Delgado and me. As outlined in the consent agenda portion of tonight's meeting, it gives me great pleasure to announce and introduce to you Ms. Tanya Corbett as the new principal at Lanigan Elementary. Tanya earned her Bachelor of Science in Public Affairs Management from Michigan State University, her Master of Arts in Teaching from Wayne State University, and her Education Specialist in School Administration and Leadership from Oakland University. Tanya has been serving as the Assistant Principal at North Farmington High School since 2015, and for the past 2 months, she has been serving as the Interim Principal. Prior to coming to North, Tanya was an Assistant Principal at Warner Upper Elementary School since 2010. She began her career in Farmington Public Schools as a social studies teacher in 1998. As a longtime dedicated employee of Farmington Public Schools, I am very excited that Tanya will be able to apply her years of experience to leading the Lanigan Elementary School family, stated Superintendent Dr. Chris Delgado. Based on her professional and personal commitment to the North Farmington High School staff and students in her interim role, we are still collaboratively working on a transition date for her to start at Lanigan because of her commitment in her interim principal role. Please feel free to join me in welcoming and congratulating Ms. Tanya Corbett on her new leadership role within the Farmington employee family. And I am so proud of her accomplishments here in Farmington Public Schools. Congratulations.
Thank you. I am full of gratitude this evening. I would like to thank the Board of Education, Dr. Delgado, Dr. Paddock, and Mr. Paddock, and the Selection Committee. I want to also thank my family, my mother, Miller Corbett, a retired special education teacher. She's not able to make it tonight, but she's watching on YouTube. Hi, Mom. My dad, Dr. Luther Corbett, a retired principal from Ann Arbor Public Schools, Dad. To my Farmington Public Schools family, could you all please stand? My folks from Warner, my folks from North, my folks from East, if you're here, you're my family, and I take you with me every day through all of my experiences of the day. Thank you. Also got surprised by my sorority sisters, and I'm very thankful that they are here as well. Thank you. And I've also, what a wonderful occasion that 2 of the former principals of Lanigan are in this audience. So I don't take this opportunity lightly. I just want you to know that I had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Larry Allen Lanigan today. And he was the longest serving principal of Lanigan, 31 years. And Mr. Lanigan, he got my take on all of the wonderful things that's going on in Lanigan with the project-based learning, the learning garden, all of the community partnerships that the school has, a strong PTSA. And he shared with me he would have been unable to accomplish anything if it wasn't for those partnerships. And so I want to continue that in the same spirit of Rob, of Greg, of Mr. Lanigan as well. Dear Lanigan Elementary, I'm excited and I'm humbled to be welcomed into this school community. Today, I read that part. I want you to know that I'm thankful for you selecting me to be your principal. I look forward to working closely with the students, the staff, the parents, and community partners to execute the mission of the school. Thank you all very much.
Mr. Rich?
Yeah, you're not done. You don't get to say
I've been trying to avoid an ugly cry for the last few days.
I have known Tanya Corbett since the fall of 2007. She had just entered the school at Warner Middle School at that time, and then up to Warner Upper, and then I went back down to middle. But at that time, she was the new assistant principal at Warner Middle School. So I was in 8th grade at the time, so I can't.
Yep.
So I can confirm as a firsthand account that she did quickly earn the nickname of Colonel Corbett. Which I assure you was definitely only
Lovingly,
out of love.
yes.
Yes, that was it. For the past 15 years, I have seen your growth in these administrative roles and your growing leadership in our district. You've been part of these selection committees in the past on the other sides. You know how intensive these interviews are and what goes into selecting the right candidate. And you
Yes.
know that when it's completed, the correct candidate is found and selected. And you know how much it means to go through this, and you know you belong in this role. And so I'm so proud with what you've accomplished and will continue to accomplish in this district and bring to Lanigan, and your love for our district, and most importantly, our students. And it shows in everything that you do. So congratulations.
Thank you, Zach.
Congratulations and thank you for taking care of both of my boys while at Warner. They weren't that easy.
It's all love.
But congratulations and thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was at Student Roundtable last week, and Ms. Corbett came in with a Superman T-shirt on. And I was like, I didn't know at this time that you were going to be appointed as Lanigan principal, but I was pretty impressed with everything you're doing over at North Farmington, and I'm just excited and congratulations. And you need to wear that Superman T-shirt on a regular basis.
It's a part of the wardrobe now. It was Adam Sandler Day for Spirit Week, and, thank you.
It's about time. And I say that with love. I watched you, again, not a creeper. I have watched you evolve from a teacher to an assistant principal and now a principal. Thank you to Mr. Paddock and to our superintendent. Our process now of hiring is phenomenal. I mean, it's like you're on America's Got Talent without the music. You have those interviewing processes, and I love how thorough they are to make sure that we are putting the right people in those positions. And we couldn't have had a better selection and put in that role. Those children are going to love you, and you are going to do extremely well there. And congratulations, my friend.
Thank you.
I also want to offer my congratulations. You have had all three of my girls,
Yes.
whether it was upper elementary, junior high, or high school. They all love you. We all love you. I am super excited for you and for the Lanigan community. I am super sad for me and the North community. So I'm a little selfish. But I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. You belong in Farmington Public Schools. You are compassionate. You are kind. You are graceful. You are stern. You have high standards and high expectations for our students. And I appreciate that about you. You make the kids live up to and become who they're supposed to be. And I appreciate that very much about you, that you help our students reach their full potential. I see that in my girls, and I look forward to what you're going to do at Lanigan. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for the gift of you in our district. We are so fortunate to have you as part of our family. Now go rock Lanigan as we know you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I'll continue. And next up, I believe we have a
What an act to
PTA
follow. Thanks a lot. Principal Corbett, congratulations. I don't know you, but the amount of passion that you just exuded up here in a matter of a couple minutes makes me feel re-solidified in my choice to have my children in this district. Because it's educators like you who are the reason why Farmington Public Schools are excellent. So thank you. So I'll do this kind of backwards. I'll introduce myself. My name is Tiffany Morris Street. I am the new president for the Farmington Area PTA Council, and I'm here to give a report. Maybe you guys can all collect yourselves in this boring report that I'm about to give, so get all the emotion under. I have lived in the city of Farmington Hills for about 9 years with my husband and my 2 sons. I've been a member of PTA since my oldest began the Me Too program at Alameda, which is now, well, Me Too, which is now Farmington Early Childhood Center. And I mistakenly assumed that PTA would just be fundraising and bake sales and maybe a few mean girls. And instead, I found a really passionate group of parents, both male and female, grandparents, people whose children have long since left the district, who are here to advocate for children. I started off running book fair and coordinating family nights, to becoming unit president at Alameda, to my current position today. Really, in this community, the center of our mission is, and everyone here volunteering, is to give their time and their organization and all of their skills to help children succeed. So in that vein, I'd like to introduce all of our members on council this year. We have a few veteran officers finishing out their terms, as well as new people. We have Beth Hewlett, who stays on as immediate past president, Nancy Jennings, who continues as our vice president for enrichments, Kelly Carpenter Crawford, who remains our vice president for community engagement. We have new officers, Kelly's here. We have new officers, Amanda Thielen, Vice President for Advocacy, Santoria Shepard, Treasurer. Santoria is here too, raise your hand. Brandy Cobb, Secretary, who can't be here tonight because she's running an event at Kenbrook, which is our home elementary school. And in a new position, Erica Adams-Williams, who is our Business Partnerships Committee Chair. We have 2 new committees this year, the Business Partnerships Committee and the Health and Wellness Committee. The Business Partnership Chair will focus on resource development by engaging local businesses. In kind, the PTA Council will help our community businesses with advertising by getting them in front of the many parents, educators, and community members within our organization. The Health and Wellness Committee's purpose is to engage families, educators, and the district concerning health, wellness, and safety issues. Our work will be informed by the health, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged. The whole school, whole community, whole child model. We'll assess needs via surveys of school staff and faculty, administration, PTA leaders, students, and parents, and create opportunities for parent engagement and education, as well as collaborate and partner with individuals and organizations to engage in advocacy issues. In this vein, this year, the Michigan PTA held their 104th annual convention, during which the statewide membership unanimously voted in 3 resolutions: safe and inclusive schools, safe storage of weapons, and seizure-safe schools. I can give you copies of all of these if you are interested in reading them. The seizure-safe schools is actually something that began with the Epilepsy Foundation of Michigan, and it was found to be so important by members of the PTA Council that an ad hoc committee was created, and they took it all the way to the state. So there is now HB 4970, 2021, which is the House Bill 4970, which would require all school employees to take seizure classes for the safety of children. There have been a few cases within the Farmington School District of children having seizures who never had a history of epilepsy, and being able to address these children and help them within a certain amount of time, I think it's between 3 to 5 minutes, is crucial to their health and wellness. So we are very proud that our PTA Council has worked with the state of Michigan as well as the state PTA. Also, going along with Safe Schools, during our last PTA Council meeting, we invited the nonprofit Be Smart for Kids to our meeting. Be Smart for Kids is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that provides education on gun safety as well as free gun locks for gun owners. They state, secure firearm storage is an essential part of home safety. With more guns and more homes due to an unprecedented surge in gun sales over the past 2 years during the pandemic, it's more important than ever for parents and caregivers to know how secure storage protects children. During the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a rise in unintentional shootings by children and gunfire on school grounds. And in 2020, gun suicide among children ages 17 and under reached the highest rate in more than 20 years. And firearms became the leading cause of death among children in the United States. Storing firearms securely can help prevent these tragedies and keep kids safe. Research also suggests that, as with the Oxford High School shooting, school-age shooters often have a connection to the school and predominantly obtain their guns from family, relatives, or friends. They generally do not purchase them. School districts can help prevent school shootings by issuing notices to families about the critical importance of secure firearm storage. Knowing this, I did some research, and I found in 2021, this board unanimously passed the Gun Violence Proclamation designating that the first day in June be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in Farmington Public School District to honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence, and to declare that we as a country must do more to reduce gun violence, end quote. The council would first like to thank you for this first step towards gun safety for the children and staff of Farmington Public Schools. The PTA Council would also like to thank the Farmington Public Schools for distributing the Be Smart information via Peach Jar this year. We now respectfully and hopefully request that the Farmington Board of Education pass a gun safety and secure storage resolution. Several districts within our county have already done so. West Bloomfield Schools, Walled Lake Schools, Southfield Public Schools, Bloomfield Hills, and Birmingham, just to name a few. For the safety of our children and our community, please consider passing this life-saving resolution. At our September meeting, we also had other presentations from the Farmington chapter of the Junior Optimists International Organization, as well as the Farmington African American Parent Network. Both groups are vital to the social, emotional, and academic growth of our students. The Junior Optimists awarded $100 stipends to each Optimist Club to carry out their work of helping the community. FAPN, or the Farmington African American Parent Network, gave the dates and times for their Super Saturday tutoring sessions, which are well known in our community. Parents, teachers, students give of their time freely and their skills to tutor our children, and it is well attended and very much needed. As well, they gave information for a college prep discussion panel that was held on October 20th last week. In addition, the Farmington Hills Education Foundation provided information about their Toast of Education event, which will be held at the Meridian on October 28th. The Farmington Hills Education Foundation, of course, provides many grants that enable everything from technology to beautiful new artwork and gardens within our schools. So I hope that everyone can attend that event. Before I go, I'd like to leave you with important dates that can be found on our website as well as on our page for the Farmington Public Schools. Our remaining meetings are Monday, November 7th, 2022, Monday, February 6th of 2023, Monday, April 24th of 2023. Our annual Founders Day dinner is Monday, February 27th, which is a fun night for us all to celebrate and meet with each other. And we will host our spring officer planning meeting for new officers on June 5th, 2023. Again, I'd like to thank you for letting me come up here, as well as for your service. You are a crucial part of what Farmington Public Schools is and what we do, and you are appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. We appreciate your hard work and your support as well. Okay. I think,
Board committees?
yes. Reports from board committees. We will move to the board committee reports. Ms. Smith, will you please share the onboarding committee report?
Yes. Our onboarding committee, we met on October 3rd of this month, and the committee shared feedback from the board candidate information meeting, board information committee meeting was on October 3rd, 2022. Newly elected board members should receive, after elected, the following: a phone call from the superintendent congratulating them, let them know that they have the lottery winning ticket, recommendation to attend all board meetings and board events, including December board retreat. So after newly elected, those board members will be able to take part in those meetings and participate in things until they're sworn in, but they won't have the critical information that is confidential. They will receive their computer right away, their business cards. Ms. Stern will reach out to them and give them that information. They will also have the FPS facts and figure cards. Those are those little cards that you see as like little cheat sheets to tell you how many schools we have and the enrollment. Information from NAESP classes, recommendation from NAESP to take the 100 level classes. Those 100 classes and completion for the member takes when they take office in January, those are the ones that will have you certified to be certified board members. At a minimum, the CBA classes, 101 fundamentals of the school board service. Most of those can be in person, but they can also be through classes online. And so where do we go for information? In district website guides, orientation on the Open Meetings Act. They will also probably get a copy of the bylaws and policies, which that's actually open to the public. Orientation to the Open Meeting Act, NAESP publications. Ms. Heinrich has a list of those books that she shared that everyone has received. Serving your first year, what new school board members want to know. Board duties under the revised school code, a reference guide for school board members, and an open meeting guide. A copy of the book, What School Could Be, by Ted Ditzner Smith, and the superintendent would set up an orientation meeting with that individual cabinet to understand the areas of oversight. So they will have the opportunity to meet each and every one of the cabinet members and have all that information given to them. A binder with the bylaws and policies, as I stated, administrative regulations, and positive culture handbook. Positive culture handbook is now the name instead of student code of conduct, for those that don't know. Robert Rules of Order, and then you can order those. There's a little cheat sheet where you can order one that says Robert Rules for, I don't like saying dummies, but that's another book. create an operating procedure best practice for the Board of Education website page and the board agreement to the web page. And that was pretty much it. We also used to, in the past, get something from TV10 to tell us how you didn't want your colors to be mixing and you wanted to wear solid colors opposed to, stripes and, stripes going this way or this way. So that all that information will be passed on to newly elected members on the board. And that's my report.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. Next, we have the Policy Committee report. Ms. Fox?
Thank you. Yes, I will be reading the final review of the attorney recommendation policy updates as of July 2022, the policy manual and the administrative regulations as of update as of 2022. On October 18th, the committee discussed and offered questions and received answers from our attorney, Miller Johnson, and Dr. Delgado about the following updates. And additionally, board members received information as well. This item will be brought up later within the agenda this evening.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fox. We look forward to hearing more about that later on. And finally, Finance and Facilities Committee, Ms. Heinrich?
Yeah, the Finance Committee met October 20th, myself and Ms. Weems. Ms. Fox was at the NAESP conference in Traverse City and wasn't able to attend. First thing we talked about was bid pack number 8, and that's the going to be presented tonight, so I don't want to steal any thunder. It's going to be presented for board discussion and approval at the meeting tonight, and it involves the kitchen renovations over at North Farmington High School, and they're going to begin after spring break, and I'm pretty impressed with the way it's going to be done. They're going to put up a temporary wall, and then they'll have a second shift so that they don't disturb the students during the day, and then everything will be completed over the summer. So we'll hear more about that later on tonight. The next thing we talked about was the annual audit report. That's going to be a discussion item and tonight, and then we'll vote on it for approval at the November 22nd meeting. Spoiler alert, there were no findings, and we did great. Third thing we talked about was a resolution for the 2023 school building and site bonds approval, and Mrs. Kaminsky is going to present that for board discussion and approval tonight at the meeting. And also, there is a summer tax collection resolution, and Mrs. Kaminsky is going to recommend continuing to levy 50% summer tax and 50% winter, and that will be a presentation for discussion and approval tonight at the meeting. And we had a 2023 resolution for client compliance on Public Act 152, the funded health insurance. And we learned that the health insurance plans increased 1.8%, but the benefit stabilization fund is going to offset the increases. And so the employee contribution rates will remain flat, and the district is recommending continuing with the 80-20 plan for the 2023 plan year, and that's going to be underneath the consent agenda at the meeting tonight. Future agenda items, this was a long meeting, there's a lot of stuff here. Future agenda items is going to talk about bid pack number 9 for the renovations at Beachview and Kenbrook.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrich. Ms. Fox?
Yes, I will also be reading the Policy 1002 update for the Open Meeting Act of September 2022. This information will be discussed later in the agenda.
All righty. Okay. Okay, so that's both the final review of the policy manual updates as well as that particular policy.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. It is now time for public comment. Again, if you would like to speak during this portion of our meeting.
Point of order.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I know that's my catchphrase here.
No, that's fine. What did I miss?
Discussion items.
Oh,
But
sorry.
before we get to that, may I please request a 5-minute recess for anyone who might have come for the recognitions to take the time who might not want to stay for our very riveting school board meeting moving forward as well, so that they can make their way out and we can congratulate those who were recognized.
I think that sounds like a great idea, and sorry, my computer shut down when we were listening to Mrs. Corbett, and I lost my place. So thank you very much, Mr. Rich, I appreciate it. So let's have a 5-minute recess then, and we'll come back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Need one? Yeah, I do.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's call this meeting back to order, please. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to discussion items. We have many today. Dr. Delgado?
Thank you, Dr. Blau. We will begin with bid pack number 8. I'll welcome up to the microphone Mr. John Barth. Sorry, I gave you a PhD already, John. Mr. Barth and his team to talk to us about bid pack number 8, North Farmington High School renovations.
Good evening, board members. Dr. Delgado.
Transferred it over.
See how much fun we have?
Good evening. So tonight, we're bringing to you another bid package, bid pack 8 for North Farmington High School. We're looking forward to this project because it's a long time coming. We did FHS this past summer. It looks gorgeous, the work that we did, and we intend to have North to equally as good. So with me, although they need no introduction, is Scott Smith from Plant Moran and Aaron Phillips from McCarthy and Smith. Before I begin, I'll let you know that this was we thought it'd be a very unfavorable bid, like the last bids we've had. Fortunately, that turned out not to be the case. It was a very good bid. That had a lot of bidders that Aaron will talk about. So the project is going forward with a $368,000 variance to our favor. So that's going to help us obviously with future bids and if there's things that need to be addressed at North as well. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Smith from Plant Moran. He can tell you about the process, and Aaron will tell you about the project itself.
Good evening. Thanks for having us again. I know it's become regular that we're here lately. This is our third award here this fall, and we got one more coming, as we mentioned earlier, for Bid Pack 9 coming up in November. So this was for Bid Pack 8, North Farmington High School. Just some of the highlights I would say for this project, just where the dollars are focused. This is a very heavy project in terms of mechanical upgrades. We've got a lot of infrastructure that's aged or at the end of its useful life. And so a big chunk of this bond program on this project is to upgrade and enhance and replace a lot of the equipment. The other thing that Ms. Heinrich mentioned is a big overhaul of the kitchen area. That was a long time coming, was something that was even discussed at one point in the last bond, so a priority moving into the 2020 bond. We're also doing some casework renovations. We're upgrading the pool equipment and some of the work equipment in the pool itself, much like we did at Farmington High School. We have some work in the gym. A couple other things. We've got some of the remaining toilet rooms that we didn't touch in the last bond. We're going to focus on those and bring those up to the same standard. So those are some of the highlights here in Bid Pack 8 for North Farmington. Again, a lot of this work will be done next summer, but we will be starting spring break next year in the kitchen and serving area, and then also in the pool area as well. And if we can be creative and find ways to get ahead of the summer rush, not impact the school's operations, we're looking to do that as well. And Aaron can talk more about that and get into some of the specifics, but that's kind of the timeline for this project. For the recommendation, we had just under 60 bids, and we are recommending 2 bid alternates. We had a total of 5, and Aaron will go into greater depth, but after discussions with the district and in review of the bids and where we were at relative to budget, we're recommending for your consideration alternate number 1, which are to replace the rooftop units in the cafeteria. Those units are from 1994, so they're well past their useful life. And while they aren't necessarily problematic now, we can anticipate that, in the near future that we could exceed or start experiencing those issues. And then alternate number 2, which is to replace the heating boilers there in the building. And those are roughly 20 years old now too, with boilers lasting 20 to 25 years probably on average. This would be a great opportunity to replace those before, again, we start experiencing some of the issues we saw a few years ago over at the STEAM Academy, over at Kenbrook, with boilers just starting to fail. And as we rounded out the 2015 bond, we did replace almost all of the boilers here in the district. So with little exception, these are about the oldest boilers left in the district. So recommending both of those for your consideration tonight. Let me go to the budget summary, which, as John mentioned, is favorable. So this one, this project is going to be funded by a combination of the bond and also the Nutrition Services Fund. We did have a chance to review this in depth with the Finance Facilities Committee last Thursday. So up in the upper left, we had a budget of $6.27 million for the hard construction dollars at North, and then we also had $560,000 set aside as part of our furniture, fixtures, and equipment line item in our budget to handle the food service equipment. In consultation with the district as well, we looked at the fund balance in the nutrition service funds and the rules and requirements for that. And so we're recommending that the food service equipment portion of this, which is $625,000, and then a 10% contingency on top of that, be funded fully out of the Nutrition Services Fund, with the balance of the work being awarded through the bond. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron Phillips from McCarthy and Smith to go into any specifics regarding the actual bids and the recommendations moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, John. Good evening, Dr. Delgado, Board of Education. Great to be back again. Let's look at some numbers. All right. So to recap this page, as Scott alluded, almost 60 bids. We had 58 bids come in early October, which is great. The bids range from $6 million to about $7.5 million, so it's a good spread we like to see. As Scott alluded, 2 alternates that we are accepting, alternate number 1 and alternate number 2. The 3 alternates were not, we discussed those as a project team. They're specific to the pool and surrounding mechanical unit. After consultation with consultants, it was ultimately decided that those were not needed at this time. due to the budget constraints, et cetera, but they're in good usable shape that will last several more years. So other information, Scott and John really covered it all. Again, for hard construction costs, we're about $333,000 under budget, which is a great win for the district. Constructability, the plan is to start, we'll mobilize spring break, which is the week of March 27th during the day. So while students are out, we will install a temporary wall, which will meet all egress and fire standards. That'll separate the cafeteria from the existing kitchen. We are working with nutrition services to provide temporary serving and cooking locations. And those logistics will be worked out in the upcoming weeks with Miss Angie Davis with the district. So we'll have little to no impact for student serving and student seating during lunches and meals. Having said that, are there any questions?
Ms. Heinrich?
I just in working with this group of people in the last couple of years, I just really want to express appreciation for your thoroughness, attention to detail, patience. We spent a lot of time asking questions at the committee meeting, and just a lot of attention to detail and really fiscal responsibility. The fact that just because there's alternates on there, you're still coming in under budget, and you're not just doing work to do work, you're really assessing, reassessing, and also working with the individual buildings and making sure that, all the needs are addressed. So just appreciation for all of your thoroughness and attention to detail. It just seems like we don't ever come up with any surprises, or you've never, in the time you've been presenting these things, you never come back and said, oh, we made a mistake, or we had to go back and do corrections. So that's really a compliment to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heinrich. Mr. Rich?
And I think continuing off what Ms. Heinrich was saying about not just doing work to do work, I mean, you see that we had alternates out there, out for bid, and saying, you know what, here's what the cost would be for these. Do we need it right now? Would we need it in a few years? Would we need it many years down the line? And if we're seeing bids coming in, I mean, if we see something that we can't say no to, and we know that things are going to increase in the future, jumping on that, but also this shows that, not only is this board and district good stewards of the taxpayer money on these bond funds, it's also the full bond process. It's not just the money coming in, it's making sure that we are being good stewards when we use it. So thank you. I know how much work goes into not only preparing this for us, but even just going through all almost 60 bids for projects like this.
Thank you. Yes.
Scott, Aaron, and John, thank you. I love how you have always added how many bidders, so that we're not just guessing. Did you do more than one? Was it just the one bidder? And were you going to just take that and just run with it and just not get any other quotes from anyone? But as always, you all have done such a great job and done everything that we as a district appreciate you doing. And I can't wait to see the long-lasting effects on this. Some of the work that has been done in our schools is just priceless. You look at your auditoriums and everything, and you've done such a wonderful job with everything that you've done over the years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, I'll keep us rolling, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Next up, we have our Director of Student Support Services, Mr. Christopher O'Brien, to talk to us about Section 98C.
Do they have the presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
The board has it in their packet, whether it's on the screen, I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. See, I'm new to this. I'm sorry.
think the burning question, Mr. O'Brien, is what is 98C?
I know everyone was wondering what that was. So 98C, so of course, as you know, in the past couple of years, to combat the learning loss many students felt during COVID, to even allow students to return to school safely, the federal government gave states money. And so one of the sources of money was ESSER 2, and an extension of that is what 98C is. So I'm going to start the presentation. This is a brief presentation, but it'll explain to you what 98C is. It essentially is money that the federal government gave the state, and Governor Whitmer basically set out a plan that would help to combat learning loss for students. So districts must apply for this money by November 30th, so that means we have to apply by that date. We have to have a plan, so we're going to discuss that tonight, and it has to have board approval or knowledge, that you have to know what we're going to do with that plan. And then we have to have a plan of monitoring, which we do. We do progress monitoring for all of our federal budgets to make sure that the programs really are effective. Now, we're estimating that we would receive $36.75 per pupil. This is supposed to be distributed equally among school districts. Now, the caveat is the more school districts that apply for this amount of money, which is $52 million, the less money we would get. So we don't know how many districts will apply. We will apply and hope we get as much as we can, but the more that apply, which we want all districts to have a shot at this, it will affect how much we get as a district. Now, the key thing is that one of the stipulations for 98C and ESSER 2 was implementing evidence-based activities to meet the needs of students. So we just can't spend this money on cleaning products or things that we want to. They have to be focused on students' learning loss and specifically something that is evidence-based. So one of the things we focus on this year is high-dosage tutoring for students kindergarten through 12th grade. Now, one of our focuses has been supplying students with interventions during the school day, but also after school. And it's hard to find people to be able to do that, especially with the teacher shortage. So high dosage tutoring allows us to contract people to support our students virtually. And it's effective because in many ways it gives us flexibility. For example, at North Farmington and Farmington High School, now there are students engaged in high dosage tutoring. Some do it after school, some do it on the weekends. If you have a football player who, I've got practice on Wednesday, I can't do it, they can do it Saturday or Sunday. They just have to prearrange it. So it gives us flexibility that we normally would not have. As well, we can focus on many subjects, curricular-based. It's intensive, it's individualized, so it's one-on-one tutoring, not one-on-5, one-on-one, so students get individualized tutoring. And we can focus on a variety of subjects, literacy for those who need support in reading, math, science, etc. They can also get homework help. Many students who may struggle in a subject like geometry can take that homework assignment to the tutoring, get support, and be able to do their homework with that tutor online. So this is our plan, and as I mentioned before, at North Farmington and Farmington High School, we started in September, and it will conclude in December. And if everything goes well, we'll start it back up in January, and it ends in April. So that will be for North Farmington and Farmington High School. And then in January, this is the cycle we're working on now for elementary and middle school students, for them to be able to do it. It can be done during the school day, depending on the school, or it can be done after school, so they have that flexibility, or on the weekends. So that is it. It was a brief presentation. Are there any questions? Ms. Fox?
Yes, did you say that the tutoring is virtual?
Yes.
And it's one-on-one with a certified teacher? Who are the tutors?
So the tutoring companies, some of them are certified teachers, but many of them are trained tutors. So what we do is we give them a copy of our curriculum. They look at it and they connect it to the skills that we need them to teach. And these tutors, many of whom are college students going into education, will work with them one-on-one via a Chromebook or a computer.
Is this a tutoring company? And if so, what's the name of the company?
We're using right now K-12 Connect, which is affiliated with Grand Valley State. K-12 Connect. Ms. Heinrich?
Yeah, how do you identify the students that need the high dosage tutoring? And also, how are you tracking the amount of time and tracking the results, or how are you monitoring and knowing if it's effective?
Good question. So when it comes to selecting students, for example, with the high school, both high school principals and administrations thought it would be best to target incoming freshmen who may have struggled in middle school. So we always talk to our middle school teams to see what students may need the support the most. So they offered it to freshmen who had that transition issue going from 8th grade to 9th grade. And then for those spots that we couldn't fill, we offered it to sophomore students. So the building principals work with their counselors and with teachers to select students who really could best fit that profile. For our elementary schools and middle schools, we've met with teachers, so the principals have talked to some of the teachers about what students would fit in well for that program that would need that additional support. Now, in terms of tracking it, the system itself can track attendance. So for example, if a student says, hey, I'm going to do it on Saturday, well, they track that because they're actually assigning a person to log in on Saturday, let's say at 10 o'clock, to work with a student. So they track that and they give the schools and us back that data so we know how students are doing. So because it's on a computer, it does allow us to track the data and student progress.
So I was just wondering, are you going to have data as far as, how these students are like pre-test, post-test, how they're doing in their classes, grades and things like that, or there's more
Definitely.
reporting on that?
And especially because part of the focus the principals wanted to work with was homework. How are students doing? Students who struggle with homework, who may go home and just kind of, like I know my kids sometimes, they'll look at the homework for a couple hours and then not do it. Well, how are those students when they get that one-on-one tutoring, how are they doing, which should correlate to better grades. So we're going to look at their grades to see the progress they've made. That'll be one of our data points.
Ms. Weems?
Yeah, so I had a question similar to Mrs. Heinrich around how we're going to measure success. It's really interesting and timely, actually, that we're being presented this, because I was talking earlier today amongst some board members about the national report card that came out that demonstrates how all of the states are doing with respect to like national tests, which are a little bit more rigorous sometimes than the state tests. And what it showed was that there was a significant decline in math scores across the nation from 31%, which was already low, in 2019 to 26%. This was just for 8th graders. It was a test for 4th graders and 8th graders. And then reading fell as well to 31%. 31% and 26% for reading and math respectively were the percentage of students who were proficient. That's alarming. Now I know at the beginning of the school year, we looked at our data and we actually saw an improvement in performance from 2019 to now, which is good, but we all feel like we're not, in a good spot. So I'm really pleased to see that there's funding being carved out specifically to address learning loss, and this sounds like additional funding. I'm a little annoyed that we have to apply for it, but that's fine. What I wanted to kind of understand was like, what data will we see at the board level to understand whether this method of, remediation is successful? Will there be an opportunity, because this is not like the normal test scores that we
Right.
see, but what will we see to demonstrate this is something that we should continue to do or pivot and course correct? Like when will we see that information?
So the last session, so we have this session started in September for the high schools, just for the high schools. It ends in December. We have the break and we go back January to April. So at the end of the year, really in April, May, we'll look at the data. We'll know the students that went through the program. We'll look at attendance too, because some students don't come every day. But we'll look at the students that came every day, how did they do grade-wise, and then on their standardized testing. So for K-8, we have the NWA, which is one of our growth measures. Do we see growth there? Because part of it is, it's not just them getting help for homework. We're working on skills. So the teachers may say this student struggles with reading comprehension. So that will be one of the focuses of the tutor. So it gives us the ability to specialize on certain skills that students are lacking in and then see growth there. So if the board is willing and Dr. Delgado wants that, we can present again at the end of the year and see how this went, to be able to bring you that data on those students.
Yeah, that I would think that would be great. And the other thing was, never mind, I think I'll bring this up maybe at a later retreat.
Okay.
I love the fact that we're being presented with data a lot more often than we have in the past, so I appreciate what you're doing. Oh, one other question. So based off of what I've read, and I'm not an educator, I'm reading that, one of the best programs to address learning loss is this more individualized instruction and tutoring. Are there other best practices to address learning loss that we should be exploring or have thought of before we decided to go with this approach?
There are other things that we are doing. So one thing that we found is effective is math recovery training. So Oakland schools, for example, they have math recovery training to help teachers, especially elementary teachers, teach math to students who struggle with it. So we have invested funding in that as a district, and we have a plan. So basically, every elementary grade level has a teacher who's getting training in that so they can help students who struggle with math. So there are a lot of different things that we are doing because we realize students have changed, our society's changed, and the after-school thing is really difficult for families. So we're looking to see what can we do during the school day when we have a captive audience to really have interventions. So that's some of the things that we're doing. We're really working with our teachers on building up their skills with Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Ms. Smith?
Actually, everything she just asked you, I had the questions, and you just answered them. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
If I may, I can just share, I want to thank Mr. O'Brien publicly for all of his work in working with Dr. Coffin and her team. We are actively doing program evaluations on the interventions that we have, specifically in literacy and numeracy, looking at K-12 and what is the return on investment, what are the data tracking, and but it's really Mr. O'Brien and his team and Dr. Coffin and her team to really kind of analyze this and give recommendations for us moving forward to really move the needle on academic progress and growth. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll continue if that's fine.
Please.
Okay, next up, I'll ask Dr. Kelly Coffin, our wonderful Assistant Superintendent of Strategic Initiatives and Innovation, to talk to you. She shared a memo with me as well as the Board of Education regarding schools of choice for 2023-2024. Dr. Coffin.
All right, good evening, everyone. This will be short. Just our annual recommendation that Farmington Public Schools participate in Section 105, schools of choice in a limited matter. Just a brief overview of the types of school of choice programs and processes that we follow. First, we have our internal process, which we have often referred to as intra-district school of choice. So those are students who are currently in our district. Residents can choose the building of choice that they would like to go to, and those are handled first in our process. Next, we have, as you're well aware of, a PA 227, which is employees of our districts can bring their children who are non-resident students to our schools, and we place those second. And then finally, we have our Section 105, which is Oakland County only school of choice on a limited by grade and by number. And so in your packet, you received the information on the timeline. We are recommending that we move that timeline up with a window for all three of those that I just spoke about from January 9th through February 20th. I think this will do a few things for our families. First of all, allow them to have the opportunity early to be able to select whichever of those options work for them, but also that they know that they've been accepted right at the end of our midwinter break is our plan. So, yeah.
I missed that for some reason. You said, when would the communication be?
So the school of choice window will end February 20th for all. And so by the end of our midwinter break, so February 27th, we would hope to have all families notified whether they were accepted or not. And I think that just helps planning for families.
Just one other question. Do you recall how this timing differs? I think it's a little earlier, but like by how much?
I think it's just a few weeks earlier. We really wanted to We got feedback this year that sometimes parents found out too late and maybe had made another choice in another district and just had been waiting and got accepted somewhere else. So we wanted to make sure families had that information. So we're just moving it up a few weeks. And then we are overlapping some of our windows where before we had them all separate. So it kind of made the window wider. So we just tightened that up a little bit.
Thank you. Any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaufman.
Okay, we'll keep going. Next up, we have our annual audit report. I'll invite up Ms. Jennifer Kaminsky, our wonderful Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, to introduce her team.
All right, good evening. So by law, we are required to have an annual audit of our financial information. So our audit took place the last 2 weeks of August this year. And I want to really thank Kim Pinchek. She really holds everything together and spearheads everything and keeps the auditors on track with providing them with information. So thank you, Kim, and thank you to the entire business office. So out of the audit comes our annual comprehensive financial report, our federal awards, otherwise known as the single audit, and then the report to the Board of Education. So this evening, we have here from Plant Moran, Jenny Colbo and Lindsay Mink, who will be presenting a slideshow for us. All those other documents were included in the board packet. However, they're going to focus on some high-level results and our financial information for the general fund. So I will turn it over to Jenny and Lindsay. Thank you.
Thank you to the Board of Education for having us here tonight in order to present the results of your June 30th, 2022 audit. Before we get into the presentation and go over the financial results, I wanted to discuss those deliverables that Jennifer just mentioned. So you should have received 4 deliverables: the basic financial statements, or labeled the annual comprehensive financial report, the federal programs audit, or as Jennifer mentioned, the single audit, and then a letter entitled Report to the Board of Education, and then this graph presentation, which we will go over. So as it relates to that first deliverable, the financial report, we have performed the audit of the district's financial statements in accordance with the auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America, in accordance with government auditing standards. And as a result of our audit, we have issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest form of assurance that we can give that the district's financial statements are fairly presented. Also included in this financial report and throughout our audit testing is a footnote describing that the district was also subject to bond compliance requirements. Our audit procedures evaluated those costs within your bond funds, and we are happy to report that we did not identify any compliance issues with the costs we selected for testing. As relates to the second item I mentioned, the federal program audit, this is a separate audit that is performed over the district's federal grants that are received. This is a compliance audit to evaluate whether the grant selected for testing complies with the federal program rules. The current year audit had elevated risk associated with this due to the significant amount of emergency response grants that the district received. As we get into the graph presentation shortly, you will be able to see the impact of this additional emergency federal funding that was received. And with this increased federal funding, there's additional compliance requirements, and many of which were changing throughout the year. So I'm also happy to report in the audit of the federal programs, we had an unmodified opinion on the 2 grants that we selected for testing. And those were the Education Stabilization Fund, or as you may hear, ESSER or ESF, and the Special Education Cluster, or IDEA. So once again, there were no findings or question costs complying with the federal requirements, which is also an outstanding accomplishment. And then the final deliverable, the report to the Board of Education. This report outlines the required audit communication, which will be covered in the presentation, and it also does include several informational items for your review. In these informational items, there's been a lot of discussion about the meaningful changes in which the way state funding will be distributed, as well as the continued focus on the emergency grants such as ESSER 3 and how those are being awarded and spent in the upcoming fiscal year. I once again wanted to congratulate the district and thank the business office on a successful and smooth audit. This was a challenging year, and the district demonstrated continued focus on integrity and accountability in financial reporting, and receiving an unmodified opinion with no findings is something to be proud of. So now we will get into the graph presentation, which will go over the highlights. I'll make this smaller so we can see it. So once again, we issued an unmodified or clean opinion on the basic financial statements. This means we are not aware of any material adjustments that need to be made in these statements in order for them to be presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The single audit, we tested IDEA, or the Special Education Cluster, and the Education Stabilization Fund, and had no findings to question cost. Additionally, as I mentioned, we also audited your capital project expenditures to ensure they were in accordance with the ballot language, and we had no findings here. I also did want to place an emphasis on the annual comprehensive financial report. Not many districts complete an ACFR. There's an extra work and component that goes into this, and there's a lot of great information within this report. These statements then get submitted to the annual Associates of Schools business officials, who then issue a certificate of excellence, and the district has received the certificate of excellence for the past 24 years.
Could you say that again?
The district has received that certificate of excellence for the past 24 years. Yes. So these next few slides just highlight the required communications that is in that report to the board. At the beginning of our audit, we sent out a pre-audit letter that explains the planning of our audit. And this letter then just goes to explain that our audit went in accordance with the plan. There are no new significant accounting policies adopted during the year, and the most significant accounting estimate within your financial statements are for the MIPSR's pension plan and the OPEB liability. We had no difficulties encountered during the audit, no disagreements with management, once again, no audit adjustments or uncorrected adjustments, and no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. No significant findings or issues, no fraud or illegal acts, and then no other consultations with other independent accountants. Now we're going to start to get into some of the numbers of the results for the year. But before we get into the actual general fund results, I wanted to spend some time here focusing on the COVID relief funding that was received. So you received significant federal assistance, and there's still significant amounts yet to be expended by the district over the next 2 years. There is a funding cliff with these dollars, and this graph shows that time period that these funds need to be spent within. There are restrictions on these funds and the requirements on how you can spend the dollars, because these are one-time funds. So the individual COVID grants are listed on the left-hand side, and depicted in green is the known or total award amount. And the amount shown in orange represents the expenditures to date through June 30th, 2022. The district has been awarded about $19.2 million and has expended $9.6 million since March of 2020. These are as of June 30th, 2022. And so once again, while it is a significant benefit to receive these funds, the utilization of these requires a deliberate plan in order to ensure there's a sustainable long-term cost structure for the district. So now focusing on the general fund as of June 30th, 2022. This slide here is looking at the general fund revenue by the source. So total revenue in general fund was approximately $144.1 million. The largest source being the state revenue at 55%, followed by your local revenue at 30%, which includes your property taxes, interdistrict and other at 9%, and then the federal revenue at 6%. When comparing these percentages to the percentages that of last year, they remain consistent. And the big takeaway from this graph is showing how dependent the district is on the state funding and the strains of the uncertainty of funding in the future and the impact it could have on the district. This next slide is taking that same general fund revenue as the previous slide, but focusing on what the foundation allowance provides. So 65% of the revenue is the foundation allowance shown in orange here. So this is your unrestricted state aid and your property taxes. 20% is other state and local, which is here in teal, and this now includes your state categoricals. So if you were to compare this slide to that of the previous slide, you'll see the shift from local to the foundation allowance, which the property taxes are now included in there. Now looking at the history of the foundation allowance per pupil funding for the district. The 2022 foundation allowance increased to $10,533 per pupil. This is actually a slight increase from the prior year. The district did receive an additional $171 increase in state funding, with $128 going to the foundation allowance. So what's depicted here is that the district is making its way back from the cuts in the foundation allowance. And recently, you have seen some return of this money and are finally back to the level that you were back in 2008 or 2009, so almost 13 years later. This next slide here is looking at the district's per pupil funding and comparing it to inflation. So the top line is the rate of inflation, and the bottom line is the per pupil foundation funding. So as you can see here, there is that large difference. The district has not kept pace with inflation on a per pupil basis. And if you were to look at this in a dollar basis, the current year comparison to inflation is approximately $2,500 per pupil. And if you were to look at this on a cumulative basis, the funding gap between the pace of inflation and the per pupil foundation allowance is close to $22.5 million. Next, Lindsay is going to cover some slides on the student population as well as the general fund expenditures.
Thank you, Jenny. So this slide covers the blended student population over the past 13 years, which we can see the continual decrease in student population. I think the one thing that's important to point out on this slide is that in fiscal year 21, the pupil count was based on something that we call the super blend, while in fiscal year 22, it was back to the traditional counting of 90% in the fall and then 10% in the spring. So while looking at this graph, it may seem like in fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2021, population was pretty consistent, but it's really just kind of a result of shifting in those methods of counting. And so the pupil count is also very important because it's used to determine the total foundation allowance paid to the school district. And then one thing we also just wanted to highlight with this slide is that a decrease in student population isn't something that we're seeing as unique to Farmington. It's really something that we're seeing statewide, and there's many factors that result of this, graduating more seniors than incoming kindergartners, people maybe not having as many kids, and people just kind of moving out of the state in total. And this next slide really helps kind of...
Can I just pause you on that? Yep. So do you, because you guys audit a lot of school districts across the state, is this consistent with what you're seeing in other school districts? Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
And then I think this graph really kind of helps give that picture. So here is statewide enrollment in the state of Michigan kind of starting off in 2011, and then we can see the current population in fiscal year 2022. So as you can see, continual decrease in students leaving the state. And then this slide looks at the district's general fund expenditures by function code and then how they're being allocated. So as demonstrated by this graph, instructional expenditures make up the largest portion at 60% or $85 million, which really just demonstrates the money just kind of going right back to the classroom. And when comparing this allocation to previous years, it's very consistent and no huge shifts we're seeing there. And then again, focusing on those general fund expenditures, but by object code instead of function. So as you would expect in an organization of people, the largest component is salaries and benefits, coming in at 84%, and that represents all the staff in the district and also includes retirement and healthcare costs. One thing that I think is important to note is that in the orange portion of the graph is the purchase services category, and that'll actually include some contracted staff as well as substitutes. So the allocation of 84% is even almost higher. All right, and then continuing to focus on the salaries and benefits expense, this graph is a kind of a great breakout of everything that makes up salaries and benefits. So salaries are the largest portion with 60%, and then 21% for your FICA, 10% insurance, and then 9% for your retirement, which is the amount determined by the state and then sent back for the MIPSR's retirement liability. So essentially what this graph is depicting is that about 90% of these total expenditures are being sent back to the people. And here is a great look at our retirement funding expense. So here we're looking at a future forecast and kind of being able to see the projected rates. As you can see, the rates continue to increase at about 1% every year going into the estimated 2026. Looking at fiscal year 2022, you can see that the retirement expense was $30 million, and about every dollar that was spent on salaries, about 43% went to go pay back that MIPSR's retirement liability. And here we are looking at our general fund balance versus the state averages. So the general fund over expenditures was about 22%, and then comparing it to the state average as well as Oakland County, about 4% of that fund balance is non-spendable, restricted, committed, or assigned, which is essentially meaning that those funds are already spoken for, leaving about an 18% fund balance. The one thing to note is that the state average and Oakland County percentages are based on prior year figures for comparison. And then kind of building on the importance of a strong fund balance for a school district. So the first one we have here is minimizing the district's need to borrow or use a line of credit to meet expenses. So for example, just to meet monthly payroll, it would be about $8.6 million. So having a healthy fund balance would allow the district to rely on that with cash flow deficits. In addition, the district receives many federal grants, as Jenny kind of touched on previously, but a lot of those are reimbursement based, meaning that the district would have to incur those expenditures and then apply for reimbursement. So again, having a fund balance to kind of cover those differences in timing. And here we also have the MSBO's and GFAO's kind of recommended fund balances. And I think one thing we wanted to point out was that in fiscal year 22, the board approved a fund balance target of kind of keeping in between 10 to 15%, which was new in the current year.
Acronyms. We may know what they mean, but our audience may not. So could you give the audience and our people in the audience what the acronyms stand for?
Yeah, so MSBO is the Michigan School Business Officials. GFOA, why am I drawing a blank? Government, Finance and Operating. Yeah. Yep.
I'm not trying to trip you up, but.
No, it's okay. Thank you. Okay. So here we have our statement of net position, which is our full accrual balance sheet, which contains the capital assets and long-term debt. So total assets and deferred outflows of resources came in at $354 million, with total liabilities and deferred inflows of resources at $526 million. The largest liabilities being the net pension liability as well as the net OPEB liability. While we did see those decrease in the current year, we do expect those to be increasing again in fiscal year 23. And then that's all we have with our presentation.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Rich?
So just a few things. First, thank you. I know how much effort goes into this kind of presentation. This is a 20-ish slide presentation. This is boiled down from, as Jenny said, a very thorough report of about 111 pages that has a lot of good information in there. And so what we're seeing, especially one thing I really want to point out, is the administration of these COVID relief funds. So showing that we're spending before the funding cliff, where we're hitting that deadline and seeing that we still have until 2024 on these ESSER 3 funds, specifically looking at how we are focusing on student instruction, recovery, and making sure that our students are best supported coming back from the pandemic. And so that's great to see, especially in that graph, kind of seeing how much we were awarded, how much was spent, and just note that I know that there are some dates that look like they're passed without funds having been used, but at the same time, this was from up through June, so there is that few-month period where those funds were administered. We're not leaving any money on the table. We are making sure that our students are getting everything that they need to be where they need to be.
Thank you, Mr. Rich. Ms. Heinrich?
Yeah, just going back, when you were talking about fund balance, our board approved 10 to 15% fund balance, and that's lower than what the recommendations were. And so is that something that we should address as a board and look at? Ms. Weems, you're our accountant on the board.
Yes, Mrs. Heinrich, I think that's a great idea. So just to provide a little history, years ago, when I started on the board, we were at near a 5% fund balance, which is dangerously low. It's the point at which the state invites themselves to come in with an emergency manager. That's why we started that policy. At the time we put this policy together, though, we knew what the recommended fund balance amounts were, but we were so far from that we thought a more realistic fund balance would be somewhere between 10 and 15%. And we said at the time that we'd like to revisit it once we got healthy again. So yes, the former board thought that this is something that we wanted to revisit at some point in the future, but wanted to give us some time to kind of grow into the 10 to 15% first.
Okay, so it's something that we should look into. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No more questions, but just a comment. I wanted to offer congratulations as a CPA myself. I know how hard it is to go through an audit. As a former auditor for 20 years, I also know how hard it is to conduct an audit and how time-consuming that is. I just want to also just, kudos to the business office led by Jennifer for that certificate of excellence. That's incredible, actually, and to have it for 20 consecutive years, it's a lot of pressure, too. Congratulations. I also wanted to just acknowledge the regular just due diligence around our finances. When I attend the Finance Committee meetings, very thorough, provide lots of great information, follow up on all questions. You guys are regularly trending below budget, which as an accountant, I love. So I appreciate that. And I also really appreciate how you're strategically leveraging the non-recurring COVID dollars, and you have a plan for it, and you're spending the dollars that expire first. There's a logical cadence to that. So I really appreciate it. So congratulations, and thank you, Plant Moran, for providing the report.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And just one other comment. Yeah, the whole board packet this time was 500 and some odd pages.
Yes.
So
Yes.
this is really good reading.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, next up, I think we'll invite Mrs. Kaminsky back up for the resolution authorizing the 2023 school building and site bonds.
All right. Well, good evening again. So it's hard to believe that we're already 2.5 years into our 2020 bond issue, but it is time for review of the resolution. So we're asking the board for review and approval of the resolution authorizing our 2023 school building and site bonds. So this is the second series, the remaining portion of the total bond issue that was approved by voters in March of 2020. So the total amount approved was $98 million. So the second issue will be about $30 million. So this evening, we have here Jim Crowley, our bond counsel from Miller Canfield, and he's going to briefly review the resolution for you. And then Carrie Blanchette, who's our financial advisor from PFM, that's Public Financial Management, is also here to answer any questions you might have. So I will turn it over to Jim.
Good evening, Superintendent Delgado and Board of Education. I'm Jim Crowley. I'm attorney at Miller Canfield. I work in our school bond group. Excited to be working on this project. As is indicated, this is the second and final series of the bonds that were approved by the voters in 2020, $30 million. Tonight, we're presenting you with a very similar resolution that you passed in 2020, authorizing the issuance of this series of bonds. And so this has got a lot of legalese in it, but it's all the steps, it's approving all the steps that are required to get into a position to sell the bonds, and then authorizing the sale of the bonds. So one of the biggest things we do when we sell bonds is we're required under federal securities law to put together prospectus. This is information we give to investors prior to selling the bonds. And we spend most of our time putting that, it's called an official statement, and we put that together, and that's most of the time we spend when we do this. These bonds are issued on a tax-exempt basis, so we also take care of all the rules that are required to issue bonds on a tax-exempt basis, as well as all the federal securities law stuff. The resolution also authorizes the appointment of your team, which is Miller Canfield as bond counsel, Carrie and her firm, PFM, is your financial advisor, and then the underwriter that's the same underwriter that sold the 2020 series, Stiefel Nicholas, would also be appointed as well. So this basically allows us to work with your administrative staff and the professional group to get the bonds positioned to sell and then actually sell them, go out in the market and sell them. Carrie will talk about that, but we're targeting early next year for the sale of the bonds. I didn't know if anybody had any questions on the resolution.
No, I don't
Great,
think so.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You got to talk.
Good evening. Again, Carrie Blanchett with PFM Financial Advisors. As for the timing on this issue, it is our intent to sell the bonds in the spring with a May 1st delivery, somewhere around there. But what we were talking about was bringing this to the board early so that if the market, as you all look at your 401ks and everything else out there, interest rates have increased since your last series. And if there is a window that we feel that it's a better time to go into the market a little bit earlier, we wanted the flexibility to get all your documentation in order, so if we needed to move into the market a little bit earlier, we could do so. The reason we're waiting until May is your ballot language had a 20-year limitation for the bond term. So, the principal maturities for school bonds is May 1st. So if we issue it before then, we have to shorten the issue. And we try to think of things strategically when we're planning your debt, because we know in the future you'll have other needs. So if we have to shorten that, that's going to make things a little bit tighter for you. So it's sort of trying to balance everything out. And right now, the projections are that interest rates will be a little bit lower in that first quarter. So we're hoping we don't have that crystal ball. If we did, I wouldn't be standing here. But really, it's getting that whole process going. We'll have to get the rating review completed and a rating assigned to this issue. So it's just a lot of work. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility to go through that in a pace that you're not really rushing through it.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And last for our district discussion items is summer tax collection Resolution, again, Mrs. Kaminsky.
Okay, just real briefly. Annually, the Board of Ed is presented with a resolution regarding the collection of our property taxes, so-called the summer tax collection. So really just a resolution to let our municipalities know that we intend to levy 50% of our taxes in the summer and 50% in the winter levy. And this is required to be submitted to them by January 1st of each year. So this would be for next year's tax levy. And that's really it, not a change. We've always been a 50-50 levying district, and we're proposing to stick with that. Any questions? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Not a question, just more of a comment. I know part of that 50-50 levying is especially because we don't want to hit taxpayers with a giant sum on their tax bill and instead space it out throughout the year so that it's not an immediate hit of that full amount at that first time. And so I know that's been our past practice, and just giving some reasoning to the public as to why.
Right, some districts do levy 100% of their taxes in the summer. To do that, that would essentially front-load taxpayers having to pay their taxes up front. If they are escrowed through their mortgage, then it would increase their mortgage payment on a monthly basis. So before switching to 100% summer tax collection, we definitely want to get out there and inform voters and explain the differences. So, but at this point, it's really a cash flow issue, and we do not have to borrow at this point, so I'm not proposing that we change that at all.
I was going to make the same comment, and we actually talked about that in the Finance Committee meeting. We're not interested in making any changes and putting that hardship on taxpayers, especially since we don't have to. We don't have a cash flow problem.
Correct. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Next, we have two policy items. Ms. Fox?
So the first one is the final review of the attorney recommendations of the policy update as of July 2022. The policy committee supported the updates and suggested adding the following verbiage to the policy 3004, which is a selection of textbooks and other instructional material. The committee also supported the updates and suggesting adding the following verbiage to the policy, again, 3004, which is the superintendent may authorize guest presenters provided that the material are pre-approved by the building administrators. There are a number of other policies, and I won't go through all of those, but just to give you a feel for it, it's the negotiation team policy, food delivery policy, parent and family engagement policies, and many, many more. This will then go for discussion. Should I go to the other one, or should I go to the second policy?
Go ahead.
I think we should pause, personally, and if I might provide a little context. We regularly review our policies at least twice a year. Our attorney advises the board when there have been changes to laws, or as they review other board policies, there may be lots of questions around a particular topic, something may be trending, and they make recommendations to us. So that's what happened. We're not willy-nilly just like plowing, digging in here, changing policies. These were all recommended by our attorney, most of them in order to align with law and make us compliant, and then others just based on best practice. So this particular update was pretty lengthy. So the policy committee met actually a couple of times to go through, read, review, ask questions. We had the opportunity, as Ms. Fox said, to talk with our attorneys to ask, well, what's driving these changes and so forth and so on. And our committee agreed on all of the recommendations that the attorney suggested. And so this first action that will come after this discussion item will be to approve all of the revisions. So there's probably, I don't know, good
There's about
40 pages worth of,
15.
15 pages.
15.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, because some of the other ones are administrative regulations, which we don't review. So, yeah, we reviewed them all, though. I read them all, and I'm comfortable with everything that the attorney suggested.
Yes, and as she said, the attorney also provided information, and as well as Dr. Delgado provided the policy committee with information that we may not have understood or needed more information on. So I feel pretty confident that we pretty much have done our due diligence on this.
I know I keep referring to letting the community know what we're talking about. Could we clarify what food delivery is to the community and let them know what we're talking about as far as food delivery?
So if I may, that was going to be one of the examples I used. So we had 3 separate conversations, 2 of them with attorneys, and so there were 15 policy changes, and some of these are very, very minor. So food deliveries was one of the ones that was minor. So we had a previous policy that said students are not allowed to order food deliveries to the school. But we wanted, the revision was to strike specific names of companies like Grubhub, Uber Eats, etc. That's a minor policy change. So those of us who remember Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Spicoli and his pizza, can't do that. Couldn't do that then, can't do that now. So that's a policy change, that's a minor change. A major change are things like Title IX, which comes directly from the federal government, and that was presented. Our attorneys explained all of those. Those are really boilerplate federal language about Title IX adjustments and administrative regulations. And so that was a little deeper, thicker conversation. And so with each of these 15, Ms. Fox did a wonderful job of leading the committee and leading us through with our attorneys to really delve deeply into these policy changes, and collectively we're comfortable with these policy changes.
So should I go to the next policy now?
Yes, thank you so much.
So the next policy is the policy number 1002 update, which is the Open Meeting Act as of September 2022. And so the policy committee discussed the policy manual update of the Open Meeting Act of the meeting of the policy board under the electric meetings and remote participation. Due to the nature of this topic, Miller Johnson, which is our attorney firm, recommended to the board to consider one of 2 options. Option A. Option A intends to reduce the legal risk and or don't wish to actively monitor which board members will be participating remotely under the condition that the board members have a disability or if they are on military duty. Under option A, board members can vote on a motion, and they can also be counted as a part of the quorum. Thank you. Option B is intended for those who wish to allow board members more flexibility in attending board meetings remotely without a disability or on a military duty. Under option B, board members cannot vote and will not be counted as a quorum. This option may create some legal risks and liability if successfully challenged in the court. Just to give you, both items offers the following conditions. Number 1, board president must post an advance notice and post the agenda. Number 2, the board secretary must include the name of the board members attending remotely. Number 3, board members absent due to military duty must announce the members' location of the city, the state, township, county, or village. Number 4, must use two-way communication. And number 5 is the remote members must notify the president 1 business day before the meeting and notify the general public. No, that was a lot. Thank you.
Would you mind if I provided some color commentary there too? So several years ago, so we've always operated under the Open Meetings Act, which basically says that public meetings of a public body, bodies like this are meetings have to be held in public. And there's some rules around what meeting in public means. So we have to post our meetings, we have to make sure that there's a public comment period and that sort of stuff. When COVID hit, and previously board members were allowed to participate remotely. So over the past 7 years that I've been on the board, there were probably 2 times when I was out of town for work, but I wanted to participate in the meeting, so I called in. When COVID hit, there were obviously a lot more, 100% of the boards were participating remotely. And so there was a new rule that came into play that allowed it, specifically allowed it, but it had an expiration date of 2022. And it said after 2022, no more remote meetings. The only time that you can have a remote meeting is if you are in military service. And then the Attorney General also provided a provision if you're disabled, and the only way to address that disability is to allow a person to attend remotely. Those are now the only 2 ways that you can participate in a meeting remotely. Our attorney is saying that, okay, now that the rules have changed, we have to pick one. Option 1, I think you explained, Mrs. Fox, was you can not participate remotely at all. And one says that you can participate remotely. Actually, can you explain it again?
It's the opposite.
It's the opposite. So can you make sure that we all understand what option A and B is again, if you wouldn't mind?
So basically, option A allows for board members to participate remotely under the condition that board members have either a disability that we can accommodate to, or a person might be on military duty. And those are the 2 options that are offered in option A.
So you cannot participate in a meeting unless you qualify you cannot participate remotely in a meeting unless you qualify as
under
military.
one of those
only
2
2
conditions.
exceptions. Okay, yeah.
Under one of those 2 conditions. And then on the other side of it, a board member do not have to have those conditions. That's option B. So because they don't have that, those conditions, or don't align to those conditions, then the board members, that board member would not be able, they can come to the meeting, but they will not be able to vote or be counted as a part of a quorum.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So it's a
discussion. Yep.
So,
Go ahead, Elizabeth. Yes.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here because I come from a family where my father was a veteran, and I solely appreciate us looking out for our veterans. So let's just say we have a board member that is a police officer or, servant in that capacity. What would we do for that individual?
So it depends on, I think it depends on whether we pick A or B. If we're picking A says that no one can participate in a meeting remotely unless you're in military service or you have a disability that requires remote participation.
Those are the only 2.
Those are the only 2. So you cannot call in, you cannot, pass go, you cannot collect $200, period. Option 2 says you can call in and participate, but you cannot vote, and you do not count towards a quorum. So if I'm out of town and I want to call in, I can call in, I can participate in this discussion and debate, but I can't vote. Option 1 says I can't call in at all. I'm sorry, Cheryl.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
No, so option A is in alignment with the Open Meetings Act, and option B, my interpretation is there's some that are trying to, because we've had remote participation due to COVID, they want to continue the remote participation option. The fact that option A has always been the guidelines of the Open Meetings Act, disability or military duty, whereas option B gives more flexibility. My personal opinion is if you can't vote and you're not a part of the quorum, if you have opinions or input into a discussion, there are other ways to have your input. You can, talk to the president, you can send a letter, you can express, have somebody to express your opinions. It's just, and option B also might be there's going to be challenges to that, and so along the way, it might cause some problems and it might not be a feasible option. And so it opens it up to legal challenges. And I know at the committee meeting, we didn't have a consensus. There were mixed opinions on which it was. And so it's interesting to hear the discussion of the full board and see what their feelings are.
I do want to be transparent that our attorney favored option 1 and said that that was the least risky policy, which is option A, yes, which is no participation at all.
Unless you qualify for those.
Unless you qualify for those two conditions.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. So, I came into that meeting, I've softened a little bit, but not entirely, but I left that meeting with a pretty strong opinion that I prefer the flexibility. The new updates to me, they just bother me. I'm going to be very honest, because I feel like we have less flexibility than we did before COVID, which does not make sense to me at all. I don't know how we're functioning, post-COVID with less flexibility. I think all over the place we're honoring more flexibility. I think the point of this is to get public bodies and public officials to show up, and I get that. That's the desire, is to have people, physically present, and, that makes sense for most public officials, but I've never seen folks on this board not show up, right, to meetings, so I don't think we have that problem. What I will say is that I'm the president of a nonprofit organization that is subject to the Open Meetings Act. We are a public body, and since this rule change, we have been unable to have 3 meetings. This is a burden to lots of organizations. I don't know who made this rule up, but they were not thinking about local school boards and other entities that are subject to the Open Meetings Act. We used to, allow our board members to call in and to get a quorum, but now it is tough. It's tough to get a quorum now because people are required to physically come in, where they weren't before. And I'm in my example, and I know many people who have also suffered, we have had to cancel 3 meetings, and our bylaws require that we have so many meetings a year.
Right.
So that's why I left the meeting strongly feeling like we need to be able to let people participate. But that's just my thought.
You said something when you were giving some background on this, and I just wanted to clarify. So before COVID, for 7 years before COVID, according to the Open Meetings Act, board members were allowed
Could participate. You
could participate,
yes.
and could count in the quorum,
Yes.
and could vote.
Yes.
So this is
Backwards. To me, that's my opinion. Yes. But the rule is the rule. This,
Yes, of course, the rule is the rule.
Yep.
I too am in favor of additional flexibility. We have a board member who is working on something very, very important that will benefit us as a board and as a district, as Mr. Walker continues his education in his doctoral program, and he might have been able to participate in some or all of our meeting tonight if option B were an option. I strongly value everyone's contributions to our conversations, discussions, and deliberations. And so I'm in favor of creating more flexibility to allow that to happen. Yes?
I also agreeing with the flexibility. Like I stated, I appreciate our veterans and our military, but I also respect those that may be on this board that may eventually be a nurse or a doctor, or an emergency comes up. We cannot cancel meetings because something comes up, and it might be something important that we may not be able to cover. I'm into the flexibility, I'm sorry.
That would be option B.
Yeah. Option B, yes. Mr. Rich?
First, I just need to apologize for having to step out at the beginning of the discussion, but I just want to say, if we look at option B, what we are setting is a double standard between what we are expecting us as board members to do to participate in a meeting versus the public. So right now, we are requiring that our public comes in person for public comment in order to take part in that part of the meeting. Now, I understand that these are board meetings held in public, not meetings with the public. But I think it sets that double standard, and I'm not quite comfortable with that. I also think that we need to make sure that we have everyone here. I know that during the pandemic, we had virtual meetings. I think we lost a lot when it came to that interaction here. You sometimes lose meaning if someone's over the phone, on speakerphone. You have technology issues, and we have had people bring up issues that have happened just through the last 2 years. And personally, I as much as I love the added flexibility of option B, especially knowing that sometimes my work takes me away from that, at the same time, I make sure to schedule it so that I'm not gone during meetings, and that's a commitment I made when I ran for this office. It is something that the public expects of us as board members. So I'm heavily leaning towards option A.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Rich's point about public comment, public must be present to make. And I'm just looking back, with option B, then we're putting more rules and we're putting our own thing in it. But I'm looking back, the first meeting of the year past COVID, and it was like I was forced to attend remotely, and it was not a good option. The remote, the technology wasn't working. As far as being able to participate, I really wasn't a participant. So it just, in theory, I respect people wanting more flexibility, but I tend to agree with Mr. Rich's point that, it's important to be here. Offering the more flexible option, not being able to vote and being part of the quorum just kind of negates the purpose. And if a person cannot be here in person, then they can always watch the meeting, or they can view the meeting as a public and be aware of what it is. And these are recorded also. And again, an opportunity to express viewpoints, and if there's strong, or if there's things on the agenda, because we all have access to it, to make sure that our opinions and our wishes are directed properly. So I just really am supporting option A.
So I think for me,
I just had one last thing to add to mine. And the last thing I want to do is open us up to any legal challenges on some of our decisions. That is one of my #1 priorities on this. we need to make sure that any decisions that we make as a board are made and are set. And, if we ourselves up to any challenges in the future because of option B of, well, this wasn't an actual decision made by the board. This was a decision made by half the board and some people weren't even there. It's not a legal decision done by a governing body. That could, just looking worst case scenario, that could lead to some very dangerous consequences moving forward.
So that, are you saying, I'm just not knowledgeable about this, if there were some legal challenges down the road at some point, decisions that we had made during those meetings where some board members weren't present would be negated?
If we didn't meet a quorum or, something like that. Like, if we didn't have enough people present making those, I don't think that they would be, that if it was brought forward, they could at least be legally challenged. I don't know what the outcome is. I'm not an attorney. I don't pretend to be.
Right.
But I just think it's kind of putting us in line for potential issues to come up, and I would rather our decisions be made not legally challenged.
I think you're making some really good points, some excellent points.
Yes.
I don't think the attorney would have suggested either option if they weren't legal. I would hope that our attorney wouldn't. I think option A is a more literal translation of the Open Meetings Act, and option B, and for the reason that you just stated, that's why the board members would not count as a quorum and would not count towards a vote. So if you're not physically present, you don't, that's why they wrote it that way, that you wouldn't be able to vote or count towards a quorum. So I don't know whether that could be challenged, but there could be some other challenges, which is why the attorney sort of, preferred option A. I was personally thinking and reflecting back on just experience. Even when remote was an option, in 50 meetings, maybe I missed one because I was on a plane. If I had the opportunity to call in, I would have. I used to travel a lot. And I probably, will again at some point. I'm not talking about like one-off meetings. I think we all know Tuesdays are our meeting days. So we tend not to, schedule other things on Tuesdays. But what happens is, and when I have had in those rare instances had to maybe 3 times over 7 years participate remotely, it was because something significant was happening where we were meeting multiple times a week over several weeks. So think about when we had to hire a new superintendent. There were like 10 interviews, right, over a 3-week period of time. When we had to onboard or appoint a new board member, right, immediately following that, there was like a 3-month period of time when we had 2 or 3 meetings a week.
Often during COVID, there were.
Right. And the only reason why I think all of us were able to attend all of those meetings was because it was remote. That's just not possible to expect that someone has the capacity to attend 2 to 3 meetings a week over a 3-month period of time. At some point, you're not going to be able to make one. And personally, I wanted to make every interview for a board appointment and every interview for a superintendent. Now, hopefully that won't ever happen again, but it has happened in my tenure twice, where we've had to have, an extended period of time where we had to have multiple meetings. That's what is triggering for me, but hopefully that doesn't happen very often.
Right. Thank you. Ms. Fox, thank you.
No, just for me, I am tending to align to my colleagues here in terms of, because my concern is really the legal risk that it's a reduce of the legal risk. And so I'm more for the option A.
Go ahead.
After listening to Mr. Rich, this is why we have this, to have these conversations. And both options make sense, but I agree with Mr. Rich. We may have a board member that may just say, you know what, I'm not coming this week. and it could put, due to illness, due to anything, out of the whole 6 years I've been on this board, I've only missed one. And I had to leave from a virtual meeting, a remote meeting, due to a family emergency. And was not able to vote that night. But it makes sense. You do not want to, because we know everybody cherry picks. And we need to make sure that we do our due diligence and see about making sure that this is done in a way that it will not only satisfy and help us as a board and with the superintendent. This has to be done in a way where there will be no legal issues taken later on down the line, so that we may right now see a gray area, somebody else may see it black and white. So I think that this makes sense.
Yes, as I'm reflecting on what each of us have shared, I hadn't thought about the aspect, Mr. Rich, of board members having the option of being remote, but the public not having that same option. That seems duplicitous to me as well. Thank you for pointing that out. And Ms. Heinrich, you also raise a good point. We all have access to the board packet several days in advance of the board meeting. We are expected to read through it, and if we are not able to be here, we can contact the board president and let our viewpoints be known, so that those can be included in the conversation even in our absence, which is why we have these conversations.
I think this is a really rich discussion, which we wouldn't have if Mr. Rich were not able to participate.
That's right.
Maybe.
That's all I'm saying.
And in all honesty, Mr. Rich, you made a great point.
It's a great point.
How do we not attend and then ask our community to just, it's like when you're a parent. When parents say, don't do as I say, not as I do, you want your community to be engaged as well as us. So why would we not show and then have them in a situation where they cannot attend a meeting or what have you? So I agree. Great job, Mr. Rich.
Yes, Mr. Rich.
I do want to just correct what I said previously. Ms. Weems was right on the counting as quorum and voting for option B. I did misspeak there. It is just, the other part was just any legal issues that might arise from option B. I think limiting risk is a very important thing that we do, aside from, the other things that y'all said about the great points I'm making.
Yes, and there is the potential, I suppose, for a board member to take advantage of that option. We would hope not. Okay. Is there any other discussion on this topic? Thank you, everyone, for your participation in this robust discussion. Okay. Come on, computer. Thank you, colleagues. All right. Now we move to public comment. Okay. Thank you. If you would like to speak during this portion of our meeting, please fill out a public comment card and hand it to Mrs. Sterin. The cards are on the table to your left, and you can place them in the ceramic jar here next to Mrs. Sterin. Each community member will have 3 minutes to speak during public comment. A couple of reminders: if your public comment is intended to be critical of or express dissatisfaction with a particular staff member, board member, student, or group, please do not identify the person or persons by name during public comment. You may request a private meeting with district representatives or utilize the complaint process found in our policy manual and administrative regulations manual, which provide for resolution at the complaint's closest point of origin. Thank you in advance for honoring this request, along with appropriate use of language and respectful demeanor during your comments. Please remember that this is not a public meeting. Rather, it is a school board meeting held in public. For this reason, while we may follow up with you in the days following this board meeting, we will not respond to public comments made during this meeting. I will be available immediately following tonight's meeting to talk with anyone who wishes to do so and to help connect you with the district personnel and resources that may be of help to you. That said, Mr. Bill Lubaway.
Okay, thank you, and good evening.
Good evening.
I have a few comments here. The first one is, I took the auditor's chart of our declining enrollment, and I put that in, I flipped it. I made, here's the, yeah, let's do it this way. Here's the decrease in enrollment over the years. You can say that's a rotten trend. Any business would be concerned about that. We ought to be concerned about it for a couple of reasons. One is, at some point, 50 years, this goes to, we go to zero. We really ought to be looking at increasing legitimately our student enrollment. And my question of the board is, what are we going to market our schools so that we can maintain or increase our enrollment? And you'll notice, we built into our budget this 400 decrease that occurred with the pandemic. And we basically just buy off on that without attempting to get those students back. Second point, I'm glad to hear some discussion on it, was on ESSER. And my question, continuing, is we've now spent $12 million out of our $19 million. Where's the report card? You talked about it. You asked those questions. What did we get for our money? And have we spent appropriately? So right now I'd say, I don't know. I think we're lucky to know that we spent $19 million or are spending. And I have another off-the-wall one. I'm aware that to be a Farmington board member, there are no requirements other than residency. No college degree, for example, is required. So in light of this, I trust our public servants to act ethically, even though not required to do so in our code of ethics. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Lubaway. Next, we have Pam Clare.
Good evening. I am the president of Farmington Transportation Union. And I want to recognize Angie Smith. Every time we do anything for the public, Angie's there. She's been there at the Founders Festival for us. She was there at the bus retreat. She stood there in her little wonderful witch costume and passed out. It was a cute costume. She sat there and passed out. We had 250 kids that came through the bus yard. All the board is welcome to do anything that we do. We're having the light up parade. December, this is the first Saturday of December. December 3rd? December 3rd. That is a big event. We have fun at it. All of you are welcome to go with us. Just wanted to let you know that Angie is there, always out there. She pops up whenever we don't expect her to be there, but she shows up for us. I want to thank you for supporting us. Thank you for supporting the bus drivers. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sunday Taylor? I apologize if I have pronounced that incorrectly.
Hi. I know I've come and I've spoke to you guys before about ending seclusion and restraint in the district, and I was wondering if you guys saw the free press, this Sunday's free press. It's about a young man named Kai who was secluded and restraint. If you have a subscription and you listen to the podcast, apparently this statewide grant they had to study seclusion and restraint came after listening to parents right here in Farmington Public Schools talk about the experiences their kids have had. And so I encourage you to look at the article. And I know when this discussion came up because of the seclusion room that was being newly built at STEAM, I did appreciate the board members asking thoughtful questions, Dr. Delgado reaching out, asking thoughtful questions. There was a lot of gaslighting and references back to antiquated systems that we are hellbent on in continuing. But I also wanted to bring to your attention that this document from the Department of Health and Human Services for the state of Michigan. And in this, it goes over the policy of seclusion and restraint for agencies that are licensed to house children that are in state care. And that wanted to point out that all seclusions will be prohibited by all licensed child caring centers where children live by November 1st of 2022. And so I just wanted to come back up here and encourage you guys to keep investing in DEI and social emotional learning, because when kids have big feelings, things go awry. Also, when adults have big feelings, things go awry, and we can end up escalating situations unintentionally. So I wanted to encourage you to keep doing that, and maybe a committee, putting together a committee and a policy that says we're going to eliminate seclusion and restraint in this district, and a committee to talk about ways to deal with those big feelings and troubling situations as they come up. And maybe we could start with eliminating seclusion and restraint in all our K-5 schools. Maybe that would be a really good place to start. And so, you know, in ending, I know you guys did a good job of asking questions and being curious, and I'd really love for you to take the advantage and lead other school districts in this state in getting rid of seclusion and restraint, because it's coming, whether you want to do it or not. It's going to go, and you're not going to be allowed to. So that was it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Krager?
Good evening. Parents, staff, students who are old enough to vote, don't forget what has been done to our children in the last 2 years. In 2 weeks, we have a chance to make our voices heard. This Board of Ed specifically has kept our children in pandemic learning. In August of 2020, they were denied the opportunity to learn and teach in person. They were also denied the opportunity to return back to school in November, also in January of 2021. This board voted to switch to hybrid learning. Teachers flipped on a switch and did everything they could while they watched our children struggle. While our children were having trouble learning, they were falling behind. And now we're seeing the statistics of how much our students are falling behind. Something happened. Please remember, don't forget to vote. We had to keep going through this from last year. Our kids were finally allowed to return to full in-person school a year and a half later. Not okay. We were not unmasked. Other districts were. In August 2022, we started in-person learning. Our kids celebrated. Our teachers celebrated. Our Board of Ed voted to keep our children masked up, and they permitted it to keep going. And they also they shunned parents who disagreed with them. We fought hard to have our kids back in normalcy when 20 minutes down the road, kids who were in Brighton schools were in school without masks. Yes, it was pandemic learning, but do not forget what this Board of Ed has done. There has been infighting. Let me remind you briefly in the last 4 years what has been happening on this board. We have had numerous board members step down who felt forced out. We have had staff members and parents who have been called names and who have been asking questions about transparency and spending. We have parents who are shamed for speaking up and for asking questions, valid questions that should have good discussion, hard questions that should have discussion. We've had police officers called to board meetings to babysit parents who may have had concerns who were considered a threat. The Board of Ed called those police officers. We have lost numerous kids to homeschool and other districts. And we also had 2 superintendents step down. Don't forget, we need to vote for the right people. Parents, staff, community members, please pay attention on how board members were treating people when they ask questions. I, for one, have been impacted by an accusation that was not true. I am a staff member, but I'm a parent first. And I need everyone to understand that we can speak up and vote, and we need to. We can do better. Our district is improving, but we can do better. We need to have hard solutions. We need to have hard questions answered. This isn't about one side. It's not one side versus another. We can come together and unify, but we have got to stop this infighting. Our district and our kids deserve better. In 2 weeks, show up to vote. It needs to be for Michelle Bushy and Bjorn Olson, parents who care.
Thank you. Next, Hallie Bard. Hallie Bard.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I honestly did not expect to find myself here, but as I sat at my kitchen table this evening, weeping again, reading the news of yet another school shooting, a thought came to me, and it wasn't for the first time, that I am really grateful to have people who sit on the Board of Education in my district that understand the importance of social emotional learning. There are some parents and politicians who oppose SEL in public curriculum, claiming that that work belongs by families in the home. And in a utopian society, I absolutely agree with them. I do agree that that work belongs in the home, but I have seen over and over that that isn't always where it's met. That's not always where it's taught. And there are children who don't have those families and don't have those homes. And so I think that that's perhaps a narrow and perhaps an unintentional, privileged opinion. The St. Louis teenage child's shooter, he wrote a letter, and in that letter, I think that's proof enough that SEL was not part of his home teaching. And so the public schools is an opportunity. This is a place where it is an opportunity for all children to be able to learn those skills, life skills, at a very young age that are necessary to be loving, to be caring, to be able to have relationships with humans in the world that not everybody receives in their home. So I think that we need social emotional learning in our public school curriculum now, perhaps more than ever. And I think that a letter like the one that he wrote is proof of that. And I just want to support you, and I want to say thank you for understanding the importance of that type of learning within a curriculum, in addition to reading, writing, math, science, art, all of those things. That's an addition to, but it is essential, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Paul Steele?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Over the last year, maybe two, I've heard at least one of you, probably several, mention that your preferred method of doing business is to receive the information, get a presentation, and then vote either the next meeting or a future meeting. Some of the reasons I've heard were, you can ask questions, get some clarifications, and quite possibly get some input from the public. By my count, there's 7 items, action items this evening. 6 of them are presented tonight.
Can you speak in the mic?
Yeah, we're having a little bit of difficulty hearing you.
Sorry about that. Hazards of being tall. So 6 of the 7 action items this evening were presented tonight. Like I've said, some of the reasons you say you prefer voting at future meetings is to, ask questions or get some clarifications or possibly hear from the public. You have also mentioned that, some of the bond-related issues, due to, supply chain issues or percentage rates or labor shortages need to be, quick action. At least 3 of the items that are action items tonight, there's no documents online for the public to review. So even if I wanted to give some input and I had some time to do it, I couldn't because it's not available, and you'll be voting on those in approximately 20 minutes. So I'd really like to suggest that maybe you try to get back onto the schedule where you look at the information in one meeting, vote at a separate meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. David Villar?
All right. Okay, thank you. So for the Saturday school tutoring for the math, thank you for providing the print option so that the kids can print some of their math that they need for them to study. And considering that we are approaching the election, let's keep things in mind. For every person that says that we took away children's ability to see each other because they had to wear a mask or that they had to deal with the challenges from staying at home, look around the districts throughout the country and notice how many parents, school administrators, and teachers died from COVID because they didn't use those protections. No one seems to include that, and that's essential. We can't say for certain how many lives were saved, but statistically speaking, it's between 10 and 20 lives per year over that 2-year period. I know that I caught COVID in 2019, at the end of 2019. I had to have been one of the first people to caught it. And yeah, it was miserable. Didn't know that it was COVID because that whole experience was brand new, and the doctors couldn't seem to determine what it is. I can't say for certain that's what it was, but I'm almost certain. So the problem in our society is that we don't respect preventative actions, and we are short-sighted, and we only look at something being worth our time and energy after it's too late. But you guys seem to be more proactive than the average. So whenever someone tries to give you negative flack for the choices that you make, just think about how many lives you may have saved, how many teachers' lives you may have saved, and so forth. And for any other group or organization that comes from out of the state to try to challenge what you're doing, they don't attend any, student or parent organizations that helps uplift the children here. Okay? So they don't have a right to speak. So again, I implore you, listen, and if they weren't a part of the organizations or they didn't help these kids, ignore them.
Thank you. Ruthie Ilian? Again, I apologize if I've mispronounced.
It's okay. It's Illich. Thank you.
Oh, Illich, sorry.
No T, so. I'm just here to inquire about the change on Angie Smith's bio and the district website. Angie's previous bio on the website stated that she earned a bachelor's.
Excuse me, we are not identifying individuals.
Okay, sorry, a board member.
Thank you.
Previous bio stated that she had earned a degree, and now it simply states that she was attended. What statement is accurate? Why the discrepancy? And who directed the changes made to the FPS website and why? That's all I have.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Kelly Carpenter Crawford, Santoria Shepherd, April Brooks, and Kelly Goldberg.
Sorry. Thank you. Hello. My name is Santoria Shepherd. I'm a mother of two. I have a first grader at Hillside Elementary and a seventh grader at Power Middle School. We are here to express our extreme gratitude to you, the board, for your services. You are highly effective leaders and trustees in our school district, and we appreciate you. You focus on what matters, and that's why we are here. You have provided stability in uncertain times. You focus on what matters. You have completed extensive training, and you are knowledgeable about educational policy. You focus on what matters. You understand the needs of our children, both their youth, young adults, and you want them to be competitive educators. You focus on what matters. You listen to and work with families, community leaders, teachers, staff, and students. You focus on what matters. You work to foster a more diverse, inclusive, and equitable learning environment. And I appreciate you for focusing on what matters.
And I'm Kelly Carpenter Crawford, and continuing with that statement, fortunately, you do understand the real opportunities and challenges in our district. You work together to focus on what matters. We are grateful for your dedication to making our schools and community a better place for this incredible next generation of learners. This statement was created, several people involved, and over 40 community members have signed on to this statement this evening, so we'd like to lift up their names. And also, if you're present and seated in the audience, please stand if you're interested and able. So Katie Hayes signed on, myself, Amanda Thielen, April Brooks, Kelly Goldberg, Santoria Shepherd, Danielle Ware, Tiffany Morris Street, Tangi Grant, Nicole Rote.
My name is April Brooks, and I'm continuing the list. I apologize if I mess up your name. Michelle Art, Tanya Nordhaus, Dr. Patricia Coleman Burns, Sue Ross, Charles Elias, Thomas Hull, Roxana Barnett, Jen Garland, Zena Kiles, Hallie Bard.
I'm Kelly Goldberg, and I'd like to continue reading the names of community members who signed this statement. Linda Larson, Harold Larson, Nellie Kelly, Shannon Kelly, Cornelia Bodia, Dr. Sakita Lewis Johnson, Jordan Scrimger, Lori Boyce, David Boyce, Maria Taylor, Sunday Coffrin Taylor, Mary Coffey, Michelle Esteban, Catherine Schaefer, Dr. Polly Bashrouche, Lynn Gagne, Dr. Catherine Bach, Linda Pawlowski, Joseph Pawlowski, Srila Datta, Stephen Art, and Becky Burns. We thank you for the work and your dedication. We thank you for your devotion to our safety, our children's safety, for keeping us all safe, and for doing what's right, even when people tell you you're wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Hull?
Good evening, everyone. I would like to say for the diversity, equity, inclusion, that we need that. We need the social learning. Our kids are not computers. They're not drones that you just put in math and reading and arithmetic and just science. You need to find out what's wrong with, what's bothering the child and see how we can actually correct it. Other schools of thought, they feel that it is a part of a parent upbringing of their parents, which they have a lot to do with it, but also they need to be supported in that, those child's emotional, because as for a parent and as a volunteer, I see that firsthand, that, you know, I help run the tutoring program, and I see the child coming in. It's not because they're failing or they have a problem in a subject. It's a lot of times they just need some help. They just need somebody to talk to. And as a tutor, I see this too much, in which that a lot of people start to have their feelings transferred over to me about some difficulty they're having. And I had to say, wait a minute, hold on, this is this is a much bigger picture than me just trying to teach you how to count 1, 2, 3. So we definitely need to pay that some attention and keep that part of the program that we're putting into our school districts keep going, because parents can't do it all themselves. A lot of times parents don't have a clue what's happening with the child, and I get firsthand information that the child feels like they want to open up to me, and the parents doesn't know what's going on. So we definitely need counselors. We definitely need to pay attention to the whole child, and just not just the learning and academic grades, because they go hand in hand. Thank you for my time.
Thank you. Anyone on the table? They've all got used. Go ahead, take a minute to fill that out. We'll wait.
You'll wait a second?
Of course.
Oh, okay. Now I can't see.
Is there any other public comment? Okay.
So I'm April Brooks. I am a 19-year resident of Farmington Hills. I'm a mom at Lanigan Elementary. I'm on PTA, as well as FAPN. But for the people who say that in-person learning was not offered, that's not true. There was in-person learning options available for my son during the pandemic, which was huge because my husband and I are both essential workers. We worked outside the home. We did not have the support of having someone at home. So I want to thank you for giving my child an opportunity to learn in person when in-person wasn't available anywhere else.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment other than the woman in the blue-green shirt? Okay, bear with us one moment.
She can speak, apparently. She can speak and just fill it out.
She's almost done.
Okay.
And now Ms. Weems and I will sing. No.
Hurry up with that card.
Don't even try it.
Hurry up
I
with
will
the card.
do it.
Thank you all for your patience. Tia Marie Sanders?
Yes, so I'm actually a resident of Novi for the last 18 years. I'm also the chair of the African American Oakland Family Network. Many of you I'm also aware of and very proud of. I just want to uplift FAPN. I heard earlier, and FAPN is the Farmington African American Family Network, just for anybody who doesn't know. Just to lift up their work, I know that I heard you guys talk about this other tutoring service sort of being in, but I just want to make sure that you're all lifting, investing, particularly investing in the work that FAPN has been doing for years now. And if that correlation of activity in the school is not inclusive of FAPN, then you are not doing the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion yet. Right now, I've watched them support hundreds of students of all backgrounds. They're the only group that does everybody, and yet I don't often hear them lifted in the way that they should be, and they're definitely not funded the way they should be. And that gentleman mentioned $36.16 per student. I hope some of that's allocated to FAPN and their very hard work and their very hard efforts that have gone in for decades now, almost 2 decades, in that work. The other thing that I want to say is your task around diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as what happened over the last 2 years, was unprecedented. No one knew what it would be. And my father always said, hindsight is always 20/20. It is great to sit on this side and have any kind of critique about what really difficult decisions you had to make. And I value those who raised their sleeves and got into that field with you to help make some of those decisions and be nimble and be accommodating. Every type of learner had to change at the flip of a switch. Every teacher, and I'm an educator, every teacher, every administrator, every board member, and I think you all did a fantastic job given the circumstances. No one wanted what happened to have happened, but you all still work together in love, disagreement sometimes, and that's okay. We want disagreement so we can actually have the tension necessary to make change. And I believe that you tried your best to work with community members, given the really tough decisions that you had. So I think the young man said earlier, if you had people who don't understand that, they haven't walked in your shoes, they haven't lived this experience, you have an entire district that you had to think about, even when your own health was in challenge. So I thank you. Oakland County African American Family Network thanks you, and we hope to continue to work with this board as it is now, going into the future, and to see what other things we can do together around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thank you, and thank you to FAPN.
Any other public comment? Seeing no other public comment, no further public comment, we will move on to our action items. Okay. We have the bid pack number 8 for the North Farmington High School Renovations Award Recommendation Approval. Yes, Ms. Heinrich.
I move that the Board of Education award bid pack number 8 for North Farmington High School as outlined in the October 25th, 2022 letters from Plant Moran, Cressa, and McCarthy Smith in the amount of $7,833,674. Funds of $7,146,174 to come from the Capital Projects Building and Site 2020 Fund, and $687,500 to come from the Nutrition Services Fund.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Heinrich, support by Ms. Smith. Is there any discussion? Okay, since we are voting on significant expenditures, I believe we need to do a roll call. I know you really wanted to call point of order, but I'm learning.
I got my fill earlier in the meeting. We're good.
Okay, Ms. Williams, can we have a roll call?
Mr. Rich.
Yes.
Mrs. Fox.
Yes.
Mrs. Heinrich.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
I myself am a yes. Dr. Blau.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, wonderful. All right, next we have the textbook adoption approval, the AP Comparative Government textbook. Yes.
I move that the Board of Education adopt the textbook recommendation for AP Comparative Government as outlined in the new textbook adoption presentation dated October 11th, 2022.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Smith, seconded by Ms. Weems. I can't recall. Oh, yes.
Discussion.
Okay, yes. What I was going to ask, though, okay, discussion.
Oh, I wasn't here at the last meeting where this was presented and discussed, but I did read about it in the board packet, and I just want to make my comments that I was really excited to see this, and our students want us to teach the real world. They want us to teach real history. They want us to teach real politics, and I was really impressed with what I read in the board packet. So thank you for that presentation for our curriculum committee, and hopefully thank you to the board for adopting this textbook in advance.
Okay. Yes.
I'll just add one comment on this, since comparative government was definitely something that I studied extensively at the university level. This is a great book, especially preparing students moving forward, while also giving that good, foundation, and includes the texts in the textbook as well that they're going to be studying, instead of being a separate compendium that you have to sometimes buy separately, which incurs additional costs. So this is a great find by the district, and very much looking forward to supporting this.
I agree. I was impressed with the textbook as well. Any other discussion? Okay. Do we need to do a roll call on this as well? All righty. So, Ms. Weems?
Sure. Mrs. Heinrich?
Yes.
Mrs. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Ridge?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
And myself am a yes. Dr. Blau?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next, we have the 2023-24 Section 105 Schools of Choice approval. Yes, Mr. Rich.
I move that the Board of Education approve Section 105 Limited Schools of Choice for 2023-2024 as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rich, seconded by Ms. Weems. I think we can do this one all in favor? No? Yes?
Sure.
I think so. Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Wonderful. Resolution off, yes.
Oh, did you want to finish? I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to go on to the next
Yes.
item. Ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. I thought maybe I was out of order again or something. Resolution authorizing the 2023 school building and site bonds approval. Yes, Ms. Weems, what a surprise.
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of 2023 school building and site bonds as written and waive the reading of the resolution.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Weems, supported by Mr. Rich. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Motion passes. Right. Next, we have the summer tax collection resolution approval. Yes. Ms. Weems.
Pick me. I move that the Board of Education approve the summer tax collection resolution as presented and waive the reading of the resolution.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Weems, supported by Ms. Smith. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Oh, man, we're good. Next, we have the adoption of the policy manual updates, which is the updates.
Yes.
Yes.
I move that the Board of Education adopt the policy updates for policy 0003, 1001, 2001, 2006, 2007, 3001, 3002, 3003, 3004, 3005, 4003, 5003, 5004, and 8007, dated July 2022.
Second?
Second.
Point of order.
Yes.
Ms. Fox, you didn't finish. It has to say with the policy committee's recommendation as
Oh, thank you very much. With the policy committee recommendations as presented.
Support.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Motion by Ms. Fox, seconded by Ms. Heinrich. Any discussion? Yes.
Just that for the policy adoptions, we'll just need to do a roll call.
Oh, thank you. Ms. Weems?
Yes. Mrs. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Heinrich?
Yes.
I myself am a yes. Dr. Blau?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, moving on to our final action item, adoption of policy 1002 updates regarding the Open Meetings Act decision, and we have the option A and the option B that we discussed earlier.
Should I read both
Yes.
together?
Could you please, Ms. Fox?
Or do I read
Just one.
one at a time?
Well, it's just one.
Okay, okay. So I move that the Board of Education adopt option A, which is electronic meeting and remote participation as presented.
Support?
Did you have something?
Should I do the other?
No, just a point of clarification. So you would only do one of the motions, and it's whichever one you are supporting.
Supporting.
That me personally is supporting?
So whoever is making the motion, it's whichever one they are supporting.
Okay, you want me to do it over?
No.
Okay.
Or if you are supporting option A, then it's fine.
I'm supporting option A.
Okay. And then we're good.
And I supported it.
Okay. Motion made by Ms. Fox, supported by Ms. Smith. I believe we need to do a roll call for this.
No,
Oh, I'm
discussion.
sorry, discussion?
Is there discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say that I really appreciated the rich discussion that we had earlier that wouldn't have happened if you weren't here. However, I see the points and appreciate option A more than I did before I got here. Thank you.
Yes, Ms.
To piggyback off of Ms. Weems, I too appreciate it. This is what makes this board diverse because of the different decisions and thinking skills and perspectives. And we just can't look straight ahead. We have to look on the outside. I appreciate it, Mr. Rich. You bringing all that to the forefront. You know, with this old brain working, sometimes we need that young brain working right along with it. So I appreciate everything that you brought this to our attention and helped us make a good decision.
Yes.
I wanted to say I really appreciated the robust conversation that we did have on this previously in the meeting, and that this also, as my colleagues have said, is why we have this discussion, and part of our board agreements is listening to learn, not listening to defend. It is being open to what our colleagues are saying. You might come in with a certain point of view, and you're still willing, when more information is presented, changing your ideas one way or the other. And that happens on a large variety of subjects. And at the same time, when you don't agree, sometimes you just don't agree. But knowing that you're coming from that place of positive, have that positive intent presumption. So, thank you. I'm ready to vote.
Okay.
All right. Mrs. Heinrich?
Yes.
Mrs. Fox?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
I myself, yes, and Dr. Blau?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay. So then we don't need to vote on the second one because we've already made our decision. Correct. Okay, fantastic. Items from the treasurer. Ms. Heinrich?
Yeah, I just want to point out this was page 484 of the board packet.
Yes.
Followed by 18 pages of detailed expenditures and express appreciation to our board officers or our department for putting together this report that I did not have to put together. Okay, so I move that the Board of Education approve the expenditures as outlined in the expenditure printout dated October 25th, 2022 as follows. General Fund, $10,161,867. General Fund Athletics, $201,475. Debt Fund, 0. Capital Projects, Technology and Other Projects, 0. Capital Projects 2018 Bond Fund, $130,868. Capital Projects 2020 Bond Fund, $1,635,710. Nutrition Services Fund, $339,451. Benefit Stabilization Fund, $1,388,348. Total, $13,857,721. Let me say that again, $13,857,720.
Second.
I'm sorry, what?
She supported it.
Thank you. Motion to approve the expenditures put forward by Ms. Heinrich, seconded by Ms. Weems. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will take a roll call vote.
Sure. Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Mrs. Fox?
Yes.
Mrs. Heinrich?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Dr. Blau?
Yes. Motion passes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Yes, wonderful. Yes.
I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda, which includes the approval of minutes from the October 11th, 22 regular meeting, the Head Start Director's Monthly Report, personnel items, and the 2023 Resolution Compliance PA 152.
Support.
Fantastic. All right, we have a motion by Ms. Weems, supported by Ms. Smith. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. All right. Moving on to reports from board representatives. Are there any reports? Yes.
We had Amy Pan come and report on the student roundtable, but I'm the board representative to the student roundtable, and I just want to, is there a time limit on this? I want to compliment Dr. Delgado. I mean, one of his goals is student voice, lifting that up, and just a fantastic job. The students are 4 years, and the new members are selected by an interview process. And they're students from all 3 of the high schools, and their principals attend. I met our new principal of Lanigan with her, Superman shirt on. Just a super person. I was so impressed with the students and the way that they conduct themselves, the way that they make the new members, the new students feel welcome. They had opportunities for small group discussions, and, the adults in the room went around and listened and just listened. And the students, it's all student-led. Our superintendent did a great job, summarizing the things that the students said. And I really felt that the students feel like their voices are heard, and they're just such amazing young people. And one of the things that they talked about is, what do you need individual instructional support time to be? And the way that the students responded, and the way that all the principals in the room were engaged and listening to them. So, they're actually going into their buildings and they're listening to their students and involving them. It's what we want in this district, and it's one of the strengths. And the students did have their input on their mission and vision, which, they're the stakeholders here. And I have so many notes, but one of the other things that I just wanted to say was, I guess that's enough right now, but it was a wonderful experience, and just compliments to our district and our staff for bringing this voice to our students. So thank you for letting me be part of that.
If I could just share briefly, I'm so proud of these young people, and it's a legacy that was created here many years ago in Farmington, the Superintendent's Roundtable, and it's just, I look forward to it every month. And we're very fortunate, 3 of our board members, Ms. Fox, Ms. Heinrich, and Ms. Smith, have been on the Student Roundtable, at least in my tenure here. And so to be able to interact with the students is just wonderful. And you can see everywhere they go how there's just such a great representation of the Farmington Public Schools. And I was the one who asked them the question to raise your hand if you were born in 2006. And many of them were not. And so I said, that's the last time our mission and vision has been relooked at. So I said, do you think you should have a voice in your mission and vision? And yes, they did. So thank you, Mrs. Heinrich, for being our representative this year.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Any other board representatives? Okay. Moving on, recommendations for future agenda items. Yes, Ms. Weems.
Yeah, so earlier I mentioned that the national report card came out, and I mentioned that, I'm really happy that we're reviewing data. I was pleased that Farmington Public Schools data fares better than what we were seeing on the national report, which is good news, but we all know that we want more of our students to be proficient. So I was going to suggest that we focus some of our next retreat on data, if that is something that the rest of the board would be interested in. I thought that I would propose that we focus on data for our next retreat.
Any particular data?
Achievement data is what I'm mainly looking at, and also growth data, both of those. And, maybe we can start to look at, I don't think that we'll have the results of some of the interventions and tutoring that, have been implemented this year. We won't be able to, you don't see the results of some of the things that we put in place yet. That's probably at least a year out. But whatever we can see to measure, our progress will be helpful. And I would take direction from our superintendent, I'm not the educator, to help us understand, how we're moving.
We certainly can pull information together. I know that we will have, if we've not already completed our first round of NWEA testing for the majority of our students, and then we also have the first marking period will be in the books from our secondary schools. So we certainly can bring some pertinent data and talk to the points that you brought up, as well as other individuals at public comment.
Thank you.
We also might, while we might not have numerical data, test score data, we might have some qualitative data in terms of reports from Dr. Coffin, from some of our teachers about what they're seeing and whether or not they're seeing the kinds of significant improvement in student growth and achievement based upon the tutoring that we were hoping for. So we might have some of those anecdotal reports.
I can also share, I know that Mr. Paddock is working with Onisha Martin as well as Dr. McDougall, our new coordinator in terms of our mental health and social support, and looking at conducting a survey for our students. We had talked about social emotional learning and social emotional wellness, and looking to conduct a survey to all of our students to see how they're doing in a kind of a post-pandemic world. And so we may very well have some of that data before the next retreat, but I know that's coming this year as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any others? Yes.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Mrs. Weems was saying, and just listening to the reports, learning loss seems to be the buzzword, but the educator in me is like, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask the curriculum department, the difference between learning loss and learning gaps. And just to put it into reference, I mean, I used to teach high school math, Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, and in order to, I know you can't teach Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, but are there gaps because of the COVID? So it's not necessarily learning loss, but just a gap of material that wasn't covered. Are the teachers seeing it in the next courses that build on it? And what is the district doing? Have you identified that? And what is the district doing to identify that and to fill the gaps rather than the loss? Because our students, the reports are saying our students are achieving. They're just not necessarily achieving in the increments that we want them to be. So if that's not appropriate to ask for, then I'm sure you'll tell me, but I'm just curious. I'm just thinking off the fly.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Heinrich. Mr. Rich?
So as a future agenda item to discuss at our retreat, this is something I've brought up individually to board members as well as Dr. Delgado, is so looking at our school nutrition and its availability. So while we had federal funds and state funds in order to provide free lunch, free breakfast throughout the pandemic, and we're able to use a lot of those funds for that funding has gone away. And so while the federal government and the White House is currently looking at ways to bring that funding back for public schools, we don't know. Well, one, we know it's not happening this budget cycle. It's just not happening. I've been in those talks with the legislators' offices. It's just not going to make the Senate budget, even though it has been passed through the House. What we need to look at is, if we are requiring students to be here, we should not be forcing them and their families to pay for the lunch and food that they need in order to succeed well here. So I know numbers have started to been looked into as to what it would cost the district for providing free breakfast, free lunch for our students. And sure, students can still pay to add on additional things if they want additional snacks, second entree, whatever. That's, of course, they're able to do that, but making sure that they are getting the correct nutrition so that they can succeed while here is something that is extremely important. And it's not just for some of our students, it has to be for all of them. And so looking at, we know what can be done, what processes can be put in place because we've done those processes before. Now it takes a whole different funding mechanism to do so, but we at least know the starting point. And so having that discussion, seeing where the board is on, for lack of a better word, our appetite to move forward on it. But I think we really need to have a serious conversation on that, because I think that is a significant hindrance for a lot of our students and something that we can do moving forward to make sure that our district is a step above anyone else in this area.
Thank you, all of you. I think our next retreat is going to be probably a Saturday and Sunday. That's okay. Any other items for future agenda items? Okay. Then let's move on to good and welfare.
Again, good evening to all in the audience and those watching at home. I have been a proud parent of the Farmington Public School Board for 6 years. Recently, my integrity was called into question regarding my bio on the district website. The description contained an error. This has been corrected. During the past 26 years, I have been involved in the district as a proud parent and as a local PTA president, state PTA rep, and our own council PTA, and a great leader. I have also helped with passing bonds and millages under the great leadership of Dr. Bob Maxfield. I have also helped with passing not only those bonds and millages and working on numerous committees, and a proud trustee on the Farmington Marching Band, and a previous employee of this district. And finally, in my service as a dedicated school board member, I've responded to emails, countless emails, either in person or by email, attended events throughout the district, volunteered to clean lunchrooms during the COVID pandemic, have been a chaperone on field trips, hosted coffee and conversations, donated funds to our special ed department, purchased cap and gowns for students at Farmington Central, donated 6 backpacks to students, 2 for elementary, 2 for middle school, and 2 for high school, all filled and all paid for by me. I have fed 21 families for 2.5 months at one of our elementary schools. I have also dressed in character and read during the month of March to the students in our elementary schools. I've gone to countless weddings, and I've also attended baby showers and paid for a couple of wedding cakes. And yes, attended students' funerals, as well as staff members. During all of the above, I have sat on several committees, the board, and have been able to condense the policy manual down to roughly 40+ pages while attending classes where I'm a proud holder of over 400 credits as a master board member through NAESP and former Oakland County Board of Director and DEI co-chair through Oakland Schools. I have made decisions by always keeping the students and families of this great district at the forefront. I have stayed committed to Farmington schools so that we are a place where residents are proud to send their children to receive a quality education. I have also set and worked on helping us get one of the best superintendents in this district, Dr. Chris Delgado. I have done this with an abundance of sincere love and appreciation for our teachers and staff for all they do. And those of you that know when I return a response to you in my emails, whether I agree or disagree, at the end of every email I sign, I have the tagline as always, yours for children. And tonight, I thank you, and I repeat, as always, yours for children, Angie Smith, Angelia Francis Smith, Angelia Gilliam, Angelia Strong, Angie Strong, and have a good night.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any other good and welfare? Yes, Ms. Heinrich.
Dr. Delgado talked about the senior adult recognition breakfast in his district report, but I just want to compliment him. It was really wonderful. And just seeing the students there, the robotic team from Power Middle School, there was a group of students from Gill Elementary. They were talking about the Leader in Me program, the 7 Habits, and just so excited about all their committees that they were on and all the things that they're doing, and just so well spoken for just such young people, such wonderful opportunities. And the adult volunteers were there, and Roxanne Fitzpatrick was very, very deserving, and just, this is the type of person our superintendent is, because Roxanne was in a wheelchair because of an accident, and so rather than try and get her up on the stage, Chris walked out and sat down next to her and talked to her. I mean, it was just, meeting people where they are, and that's who we are as a district, and that's who he is as a superintendent, and it's just really nice to be a part of that. And 2 things. My grandson is a kindergartner, and so at Forest Elementary, they have the Letter People Parade, and it was so wonderful. And because my daughter said, Teddy's going to walk in the Letter People Parade. So we're standing out there. The entire school comes out. It wasn't just the kindergartners, but the entire school files out, and they lined up, and they made a pathway, and then the kindergarten classes walked around in their little letter things, and so it was really a wonderful community. And
what is Letter People? What does that mean, Letter People?
They had their vests. It's their, A is for alligator, and Teddy was C. He wanted to be T, but he was C. But they just but that was a program my kids had when they were in
I see.
kindergarten. So they're learning their letters and their sounds.
And they each got to represent
Right,
a letter.
right.
Okay,
And
letter
the teacher
people.
assigned it, they didn't pick, but they had their little, they were paper bag vests, and they were so cute.
Oh, my gosh.
And next Friday is the Halloween parade, and the whole school goes out in the neighborhood, so I'll be reporting on that, too.
Wonderful.
Perks of being a grandparent and a school board member.
Thank you for sharing those delightful vignettes with us. Thank you. Ms. Fox, did you have your hand up?
Terry has her hand up.
I agree that there are perks to being a parent or grandparent and a board member. I was able to participate in some of the homecoming festivities at North Farmington High School, and that was a blast. Got to attend the pep rally, saw Ms. Smith there. It was really fun, and what was great was, I mean, there's been a couple of years where we weren't really participating that way, and I didn't see as much school spirit, and it's back, like times two. It's really fun. So I got to attend the pep rally. I participated in a lot of the events over the weekend, including the game. The weather was beautiful. It was awesome. Unfortunately, North Farmington didn't come away with a win, but the cheerleaders did a great job. The halftime show was great. The band was awesome. They learned Queen, which was awesome. And I happened to be sitting in the band section. I didn't know that. That was even better. The band moms are great. Yeah, it was really, really nice. The best part of homecoming, though, was it felt like a homecoming. I got to see a lot of people I hadn't seen in a long time. Alyssa Peak, who was the student roundtable president last year, came back to give the crown to the new homecoming royalty, which was really, really nice. I saw a lot of teachers there. It was really nice to see Ms. Kaminsky from Warner to come and check in on her 8th grade students who are now 9th grade students at North Farmington. That was really nice, and the kids really enjoyed seeing her, so it was a really nice homecoming. I also attended the senior adult breakfast. I echo comments around the recognition of the award recipient and the students. And I thought it was Longacre, actually, that was there with the Leader in Me program.
Oh, was it?
I think so. But yeah, the students were so great. They're definitely leaders, and you just ask them a question and they were very articulate, and in recruiting more people to their committees. It was really, really cute. The suicide prevention panel happened last week. It was really well attended, and I learned a lot about myths and stigmas associated with suicide, and I really look forward to increasing dialogue in that area. I thought it was a great opportunity for some sharing and caring. I attended the choir performance for North Farmington High School, and I'm feeling even more like a music mom now. That performance was awesome. It actually brought some participants in the audience to tears. It was really good, and I feel very strongly that that choir and the jazz, actually both the high school and the middle school concerts could charge people. They're really, really good, really good. The district vision and mission statements, there were 2 days where the public could come in. I attended one of those days and was really impressed with people who attended and participated. I got feedback that both days had very similar comments, and I'm really happy that the students got to be involved as well. October is National Bully Prevention Month. There was a nice listserv that went out, thank you to the district for that, on how the internet has really changed how youth experience bullying. There were a lot of great resources there for parents on how to empower youth, how to approach the situation at home if your child is being bullied, witnesses bullying, or is participating in the bullying themselves. So I thought that was really good information. And then finally, the Toast to Education is Friday. I hope to see you. That is my favorite event of the district, or Farmington Hills Education Foundation, rather, of the year, and I'm so happy that it's in person this year. So.
Yes.
And just know that Ms. Williams is going to take all the gifts home.
Well, no. Not necessarily.
My question is, are you wearing the boa and the long gloves, or just the boa?
That's a great idea.
I haven't been to this event before, so I was asking this morning at the civility conference. I was asking Ms. Smith, some fashion advice.
I'm okay with that. I was president of the drama club,
Oh, God.
if you didn't know.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Rich.
Just a few things for good and welfare.
Yes.
First, we as a board are extremely thankful and supportive of the Farmington African American Parent Network, especially our Super Saturdays tutoring. I'm sure at some point this year you've seen all board members there tutoring, showing their support, speaking with our students, our parents who are coming. And it's right here in the Maxfield Education Center. So it's
Literally,
good to have,
right.
Yes, literally right here. So it's great having that. Now, just a warning that there is no tutoring this Saturday, but it will resume again on November 5th. So please take note of that. And so while we do appreciate all the compliments we got for the tutoring done on Saturdays through Super Saturdays, that's not us as a board. So I just really want to pass those congratulations over to who really deserves it. And since the president, Thomas Hull, is here, thank you, Thomas. Thank you to the rest of the board of the Farmington African American Parent Network, as well as everyone who takes part in that to make it such a resounding success, and something that we hear about frequently as one of the best programs offered for students. So thank you, and keep doing the great work. We want to be as supportive as we can. Two last things. First of those is if you have a student who is interested in attending a service academy, so we are talking about the United States Naval Academy, Army Academy at or the Military Academy at West Point, the Air Force Academy, or the Merchant Marine Academy, you need a congressional nomination in order to go. You can get those from your United States House member or your two U.S. senators. The deadline for a nomination application for Senator Stabenow has passed. You can submit an application online for Senator Peters through 11:59 p.m. on October 30th, and Congresswoman Stevens' office is accepting nomination applications as long as they are post-dated by October 31st. So that is this upcoming week. Please get that in. An admission into one of these academies is a great feat. It equates to about a $250,000 scholarship, as well as commissioning as an officer as soon as you graduate. So great opportunity. If you have any questions about that, reach out to your senator's office, your congressperson's office, and I'm sure that they would be more than happy to answer any questions that you have on that. And lastly, as we have Halloween coming up on Monday, please, if you're out there trick-or-treating, trick-or-treat safely. Be sure to show at least a little bit of restraint when consuming your candy. You don't want to get a stomach ache. And dentists love this time of year, so please be sure to brush your teeth as well. All right, that's all I have.
Are you speaking to the parents?
That's for if there is a parent tax on some of the candy, that does sometimes happen. So
Yes.
yes, for everyone.
Yes.
Is anybody else going to admit that they steal their kids' candy?
Not in a public meeting.
No?
I don't have kids, so.
That's an open meetings violation.
Is there anything further? All right, our next meeting of the Board of Education will be held on November 22nd, 2022 at 6 p.m. The meeting will be open to the public and will be cablecast live on TV 10. Thank you all. We are adjourned.